messed it up. Hello again, friends. And you are our
There's
friends.
no one left.
And you are our friends. Welcome back to the concert hall that is Jim Cornette's Drive Thru. I'm your host, the great Brian Last. Great Brian Last. I can't even speak. It's going to be one of those shows. It started off, everyone's in a bad mood, and we've got wrestling to talk about. We're going to have some classic stuff because we need some good stuff. And we're going to talk about whatever Jim watched on Raw and Smackdown. I mentioned my name. I'll do it properly. I'm the great Brian Last, and here he is, the star of the show, the leader of the cult of Cornette, the Kentucky Derby Weather Bureau, Mr. Jim Cornette.
What in the do it properly? I don't know if properly is a word that could be applied to anything that's gone on here in the last few minutes, but that organ sounded like the organ grinder was trying to commit suicide by cranking his own head in the fucking. Oh, here we are. I was in a bad mood until I heard all of that. And I said, well, it could be worse. I could be him right now. But we love you, Brian. And
thank you.
We want you to seek help. I'm not the Kentucky Derby Weather Bureau. I'm the Kentucky Derby winner, baby. Did I tell you about this? I talked to you since then. Maybe I have, maybe I haven't. It's not for public consumption. But did I tell you about the Derby?
No, we have not talked since the Derby. And what is not for public consumption? I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, whatever we might have talked about. These people trying to pry our business. Fuck them.
I saw that it wasn't journalism that won. It was one of the other horses.
Well, but now here's the thing. See here, there's more than one way to skin a racehorse. Because what Stace was doing was she figured out a way. You can place a bet on a horse race on your phone now. Were you aware of this?
Yeah, I knew about that.
God damn it. That's what did this just come up? How in the world is it? But children could be doing this. We're teaching the children to gamble. They've all got phones. I didn't know it was just that. I thought you had to go down to the track with a cigar stuck in your face and walk up to the window.
You never had to just go to the track. You could have gone to the OTB down the street.
The who?
Off-track betting, OTB.
We don't have that. So we got a big old racetrack with 150,000 people in it. They do their betting over there the way God intended it.
There's no OTB at all in Louisville, Kentucky, home of the
I have
Kentucky
never
Derby?
seen an OTB or had people talk about an OTB.
Man, sometimes the line is out the door in the OTB. You're like, what the hell's happening today?
Well, are
in
you
the
sure
middle
it's
of the
not
day.
the OP? You sure it's not the
PM?
OPP?
It's not the OPP.
I heard the line was out the door for that too.
Well, I don't know.
But nevertheless, back to the Derby. Stace figured out a way.
The Porkies, no matter what we're talking about.
Well, hey, that's all, folks. So Stace got on her phone and figured out you can see the horses, because I wasn't paying any attention, because you know me, I'm constantly immersed in our work here, working to build the empire. And she read off the names of the horses, and before she even read them to me, before I'd heard about them, she said, I know which one you're going to pick. Journalism. Well, obviously, right? Because of the family connection. But he's also the favorite. I didn't know that until I heard the name, and I picked it anyway. But when it came time to put the money down, Brian, to lay that money down, I said, it's been raining. It fucking poured rain all goddamn Derby Day with those fucking lunatics out there in their pink suits and fucking frilly hats. And the women were even fucking more outlandish. And they're all into ponchos and people are wearing these suits with these mud boots. And it just rained. It rained all week. And finally, it doesn't rain for the Derby, but the track is what they call sloppy, which one of the newscasters said it was like walking through quicksand. It was that just soaked. And I said, something can go wrong, even though he's the favorite, even though he may be pure in heart and says his horse prayers by night. when the rain comes down and the ground is muddy, he might end up a fright. I said, I'm going to hedge my bet here. See, that's what where the phrase came from. I said, I'm going to bet journalism to place. And that way he's got two cracks at it. And wouldn't you know which pony won the pony, or which pony won the derby, or which derby won the pony? Son of a bitch, he won. I won because he came in second. See how that works?
Yeah.
See, you gotta talk
win?
to a. I don't know. It's on Stacy's phone. It's not real money. Maybe they might be.
I meant, how much did Stacy win?
Well, I've said they might be paying her, but I think it was $60-something or whatever, is what she said before she left on that trip to Paris.
The racetrack's the one place you can go to and still see like the classic characters of old that like society has shunned. You look in the stands, you sit amongst the people in the stands, you're like, there's some people here that they have nothing to do, and this is it, and they're waiting for some kind of hustle here.
Buck Robley used to, not only did Buck Robley used to hang around I don't know if it's horse racing in New Orleans. It might have been dog race. There was a variety of races of animals that he attended, dogs and horses and things of that nature. But that's where he met that fucking Elvis impersonator. And what did he have a used car lot too? Was it that fucking corny that it was real life because you couldn't make it up? But he remember the North American Wrestling Federation, Buck Robley at a racetrack met a fucking guy with money that wanted to back Buck Robley in 1991 to bring wrestling back to New Orleans after Watts had gone out of business and blah, blah, blah. And they got television. I actually did a couple of the televisions. He had me come down there and manage. I went once and did 2 TVs in one night. And bless him, Paul Orndorff was there. A few of us were suckered into this. The fucking backer came out on TV as a manager with an Elvis gimmick. At least he looked like Elvis. I don't know if he, fully doing the gimmick. And Buck had sold him on the idea. I'm trying to remember this after 30-something years. And it was such a convoluted scheme. Buck had sold him on the idea he's going to bring him out and make him a manager. And then he's going to build him up, and then he's going to turn him babyface and let him bring all the underprivileged kids to the matches for free, and he'd be the biggest goddamn babyface in town. And I believe I actually sold this guy the contract of somebody. And made fun of him at the same time. The clip was on Twitter a few years ago. But I think they did 2, maybe 3 tapings, and then suddenly the guy was like, what the fuck? Am I going to be a hero yet? And this is costing a lot of money, and say finay.
Would that have been a good thing for Smoky Mountain Wrestling? Would that have been something that helped you? The idea that right around the time you were starting up and within, the next year or two, if there were other small promotions / wannabe territories or, claiming they're going to be territories opening up in surrounding states, just in terms of talent sharing and just a system, would it have helped you or hurt you?
Well, it would have helped if any of them were, I don't want to say successful, because then people are about Cornette, but this lasted 3 TV tapings. I'm talking, we were there for 4 years. If someone had been competitive with us to the point, not competitive, but in terms of, okay, we can last a few years so that this thing could start coming together, because you can't just Jim Crockett, for fuck's sake. Remember when he tried to start up
he actually came into your backyard. That's a little different.
Well, but no, it wasn't even. No, he didn't run against us. He came to Chattanooga. We didn't have Chattanooga as a market yet. We got it for TV later, but we were never able to run it.
He came to Chattanooga, used your talent, and then tried to poach the Rock and Roll Express.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. He did. He didn't come in our backyard. He just came adjacent to us, borrowed our ring because I wanted to help him out, and fucking then got mad when the Rock and Roll wouldn't give him the dates that they'd already given me. But the point is, they knew same thing. He didn't last more than how many tapings did they do? Paulie was going to be his booker, and he had this and that and the other thing. But I can't remember. That might have actually not been a rhetorical question. How many tapings did they do?
I don't know if they did more than one in Chattanooga, but then they moved to Dallas.
No, they went to Dallas and did.
And it bombed. Yeah.
But and I mean 2 or 3 more, maybe, was it? But that's the point, is that.
Did you ever see the TV?
I'm sorry?
Did you ever see the TV?
I saw some matches from it.
Like hosted in the studio by Tully Blanchard, like as just a down the middle announcer, no heel Tully Blanchard or anything. The Reverend Tully Blanchard.
He straightened up, but point being, and Memphis was across the state, and we worked somewhat with Randy when Randy Hales was booking, and Lawler worked for us because we were all working in the WWF periphery at that point. But besides Memphis, there was nobody else really running on a regular level for long enough to establish any kind of relationship with, and except for, again, whatever the fuck was going on in Philadelphia between 1993 and 1995. We just watched the Eddie Gilbert Dark Side, and Paulie was going to do that, but there was going to be a part of Crockett's thing, and Todd Gordon, who I never met. To this day, I don't think I've ever fucking stood and said hello to Todd Gordon.
Oh, you must have. He was the ring announcer for Goodhart. You must have met him.
I didn't know that. See, I didn't, because he wasn't anybody to.
He was one of them, I believe.
Okay, he wasn't anybody to pay attention to at that point. If I did 2 of Joel Goodhart's shows, I think. The point is, Todd Gordon was not a person that I would have paid attention to at that point. Otherwise, to be polite if he crossed my path because he was the announcer or whatever. But it's, that's Todd Gordon. I'll remember him when he is famous later. I don't know.
You know why? You know why I knew who he was when ECW started? He was in the. Oh fuck! You would know better than me. Was it ABC or NBC? They did the Nightline, I guess it was, maybe, about WCW right after Elegante debuted. And they showed Jim Herd and Elegante and the planning stages of the costume. And they showed Todd Gordon and his family. Like, here's, Todd Gordon in Philadelphia watching wrestling with his family. Never, he would one day fund the craziest shit ever.
Well, but anyway, back to the topic. Between 1993 and 1995, whatever was going on in Philadelphia, I didn't have time to get involved. And again, we've talked about Tennessee wouldn't work in Philadelphia, and Philadelphia wouldn't work in Tennessee at that point in time. And those guys were local and my guys were local because none of us were setting the world on fire and wanted to buy a bunch of plane tickets. And there was nobody else besides the big companies with the contracts and the picadillos and all that stuff.
Toward, 95, you have Ozark Mountains there by then. Again, I don't know exactly what Burt was doing and how full the schedule.
I swear to God, the Dutch Mantell's line, the steroids, the guys aren't even on food, could have applied to the Ozark Mountain Daredevils at that point.
Was there anything serious out of Georgia? I mean, you did stuff with Sammy Kent, but
there was nothing really. It was all independent. There was not any territory structure where they had television and regular towns that they promoted and were in a position to trade people back and forth and pay an outside guy to come in and make any difference, that type of thing. So,
Heyman's 93 is a really interesting year because he ends up booking ECW. And, imagine, the Gilberts knew not just when Kevin Sullivan was there, when all of a sudden Ted Petty was booked. Because that's a Heyman guy. I think that was like they're doing something different here with Paul. But if you look at 93, he begins the year, he's left WCW. He goes on the Arezzi show and announces that he's doing something that we've never heard of called HD, high definition. And he's filming in some town in Texas because they had the guy on. And they shot this television taping because Ted Petty teamed up with Dean Malenko as the Kimono Dragons. And Jake Roberts was there, Bob Orton. So Paulie was doing that. At the same time, Crockett, knowing that his non-compete is about to expire, At some point, Crockett and Heyman connected and became good. I don't even know if good friends is the right word. We're planning on working together.
Pump the brakes.
Yeah,
became business associates.
We're planning on doing stuff. When would that have happened? Did that surprise you when you heard that Jim Crockett was working with Paul Heyman?
Well, I'm trying to remember. I remember the HD project you talked about. Did that footage ever make the light of day, by the way?
I do not believe so. I've always wanted to see it because they did a second taping too at the Manhattan Center in early '94 with Terry Funk against Sabu, and there's only been fan footage. I don't think that ever.
But am I correct in remembering from the time today, the impression was, whether factual or not, that Paul had found somebody that wanted to get in on the ground floor of HD television production and convinced him that wrestling was the way and somehow didn't pay a lot of money for it to happen?
I think it was the World Wrestling Network. I think that was what it was going to be.
Well, but see, that was Crockett's thing too. And if they were in Texas, that's where Jimmy Crockett had moved to Dallas in the late 80s. Some said because they wanted to establish the office there in a major metropolitan area and media market. And some said to get away from the rest of the family.
Well, Watts did have an office there. When they bought the UWF, they got the Dallas
yes,
office.
But Jimmy didn't have to goddamn move out and live there.
Right.
And he ended up moving, and he had an ice cream store. That's the thing, is while he was doing that non-compete with TBS, finally, whatever he moved out there, he was doing whatever the fuck he was doing. And then when he was wanting to put this television thing together again, the World Wrestling Network, and do these tapings, he called me, and he was working the cash register at his ice cream store. Because he said, hold on, and I heard him, ding, ding, thank you. I mean, he was making fucking change. And I'm not trying to say that Jimmy needed money. I'm trying to say that Jimmy was probably going nuts and wanted something to fucking do and get back in the wrestling business, because he had plenty of money. He didn't have to work in his own fucking ice cream store, right? But I think he didn't realize.
It's like that Seinfeld episode.
Well, yeah. And he didn't realize, which I didn't fully realize, that wrestling was going to get worse in 1992 and 3 than it was in 1990. And I don't think that he fully realized. And I was just trying to do a regional territory and not be national television and do all this bullshit. He's trying to get back into business again with the World Wrestling Network. And he's going to put this thing together. And he's planning it while he's working the cash register at the ice cream store. And he didn't realize that this shit was going to get even worse, because Vince was getting all the attention and all of it was bad, and steroid trials and phony bullshit, and Hogan's going to Hollywood and whatever the fuck we've all covered. And so again, when he did the first taping in Chattanooga, I believe, if I want to say, is because Ronnie West, who had been a long time, from the time he was a referee in the 60s from Chattanooga, or from right outside there, Cleveland, had been a referee for Goulas, and then had worked for Jarrett, and then had worked for Georgia, and then had worked as a road agent, a referee at WCW, and etc. So I think he thought Ronnie could draw him a good house there for the taping. And that's when he borrowed my ring. I said, we're not working. He had the Rock and Roll Express. He had all these guys because we didn't have a fucking date that night, right? And then, he wanted to just, rock and roll, come on, we're going to do this again. And they're like, bullshit, you've done one TV. We're working there 15 days a month. What are you? Jimmy, let's calm down. And he got miffed, and he went to Dallas, and they flamed the fuck out. And I'm not saying Jimmy was away for 5 years because contractually he had to be.
That is remarkable.
But during that time, he thought he could do it the fucking again, and it had got a lot worse.
The fact that he had 5 years after the sale is pretty remarkable.
Well, I didn't negotiate the fucking contract.
Was David Crockett there until the end?
I believe so, in some capacity. I mean, they gave him a variety of jobs and departments, but I think he was, at something until very soon before, if not till the end, I would think.
Should Jim Crockett have had like wrestler themed ice cream flavors?
I think then Vince would have beat him in another fucking deal. He'd have taken him to court and sued him for a gimmick infringement.
All right, this has been, I don't know what this has been. Kentucky Derby talk.
Well, it's been, but also, I wanted to mention something. Ladies and gentlemen, we on the program here often raise awareness of a particular, a person or a community, as they say, that's in need, that's needy, that's in dire straits because they can't get something to help them live their lives a better or healthier life or whatever. And now we'd have to take up the mantle of crusading for your friend, ladies and gentlemen, and mine, the great Brian Last. Somewhere in this wide world, it's got to be the season for sumo citrus mandarins. And I plead with you, I implore you, wherever you are in the world, that it is now time for those beautiful, orangey balls of goodness, sumo citrus mandarins, to be grown and plucked and enjoyed, and the life-giving sustenance squeezed out of them and spread all over your body. Please send a crate or a case or a carton or whatever container that they are properly contained in to the great Brian Last, because he's got some what my guy at the post office used to call white people problems up there in Jersey. He's afraid they're out of season.
Again, this is a very small problem, but yes, it appears that the sumo oranges are out of season. They go out of season usually around this time of year. I was hoping to get another batch of them before they did, but they are gone to return.
But not forgotten.
A nice offer you made, but no one will be able to get them. They are literally out of season until next year.
Well, it's got to be the season somewhere. It's goddamn Australia's the other side of the world, so their winter time is coming up. So it's somewhere between the 49th parallel and Tippecanoe and Tyler too. Around the world, there's got to be a place where it's perfect weather to be growing the citrus mandarins.
Maybe you can grow them in your backyard.
Sumo style.
That great Louisville soil. Why don't you do something?
Well, the soil is sloppy over here.
Perfect time to plant.
The rain.
The perfect time to plant something.
Well, I can't provide them to you if I plant them now until they grow.
All right. Well, thank you.
So you got to think about the growing. All right. And can I hold on here one second? I've got a couple of things here. I want to say, first of all, we got to explain something, Brian. I saw we got to talk to the kids. Somebody tweeted about the From the Files, one of the From the Files segments that we have done, where you have read correspondence from your friend and mine, Norm Keitzer, who used to publish the Wrestling News, those files which you now possess and operate, and the correspondence that he had with other wrestling personalities. And you'll read a letter from the wrestling personality and then a letter Norman wrote them back or whatever. And somebody said, oh, well, bullshit. If it wasn't email, it's just mailing letters. How would he have both sides of the conversation? He would have mailed the letter. You see what I'm saying? Brian, should we enlighten the kids about the thing they used to have called carbon paper?
Well, I think the problem is you have to start by enlightening the kids about a thing they used to have called typewriters. That's the issue.
Children, and I'm hoping, I don't know, but I may have a box of carbon paper. I loved carbon paper when I was a kid.
The smell.
And my mom would bring it home when she worked down at the Chamber of Commerce for a few seasons. And my dad had it in the desk when I was a little kid, because younger folks out there, when you operated a business back in those days and you were sending out a letter to someone and you wanted to keep a record of it in your files and they didn't have the email where you just print it out or whatever the fuck, or put it in your goddamn pipe and smoke it too, or wherever the kids store their emails, there was a piece of paper that was covered with carbon. Oh, carbon copy. What do they think CC on the emails is now?
Yeah, it's true. That's right.
Carbon copy is CC me on this email, carbon copy. It had the muck on one side of the sheet when you peeled it off and you stuck it in between your goddamn two pieces of paper and put it in your typewriter. When you typed the original letter on the paper, it would also make an impression on the piece of paper underneath that you kept as the carbon copy. And that's what businesses did, and stick them in the files. And that's why that, Brian, you now possess 27 file cabinets of material from a wrestling magazine publisher in Mankato.
That's why I have two-way conversation. There's a carbon copy of seemingly everything. From checks to letters to everything. Everything.
And it was easier and less expensive and less time consuming than putting it on the mimeograph machine. You remember that one?
Yeah.
And those smelled good too. Maybe that's what made all the kids from my generation of school smart, because we inhaled all the carbon paper and the smell of the mimeograph machine at school, making all them copies.
What did they call them?
I can smell it now.
When you were a kid, did they call them dittos?
I remember the phrase ditto, but we were actually in the old mimeograph thing. I remember the word mimeograph machine being said constantly times per day. Constantly times. That's a mathematical measurement, by the way.
Ditto is the thing I remember everyone in the 80s when I was a kid calling it, that just no one calls it now. I'll make a ditto. No one says that.
You know what nobody else says? Nobody else
Give
says.
us more of this. Oh, what were you going to say?
No, I got to plug something. This is just a real quick plug, but it's not capitalistic and commercial in nature. It's because it's a great thing that we just got, both of us. Our friend Scott Teal at crowbarpress.com has published a book by Richard Vicek, who did Dick the Bruiser biography a few years ago, and Stephen Verrier, who did, help me.
He did Gene Kiniski. He did Canadian.
Well, now not in a biblical way.
He did Gene Kiniski. No, he did the Gene Kiniski biography. He did.
Yes.
He's been working on various wrestling history projects.
Kiniski, but then that Kiniski book was like Kiniski, very thick. But anyway, they do wonderful research, and the book is Wilbur Snyder, the world's most scientific wrestler. And you go to crowbarpress.com for information about this and a whole lot more. But I haven't even, I had to jump into some of the partnership between Dick the Bruiser and Wilbur Snyder that led to the formation of the WWA in Indianapolis, because that is with the first wrestling that I actually ever saw. And I'm fascinated, wanting to know more. And we've studied Tennessee, and I was here so much and heard so many of the stories. So much of this is new. But without even getting into a review of the book, because I haven't read the whole thing, just a factoid. They even got, because Vicek has done numerous interviews, as I said, with the Bruiser book, but for years he's done interviews about the WWA, and they talked to Mike Snyder, Wilbur's son here, and have personal documents from the family. But he saw Bruiser's actual book, Bruiser's book. We always talk about, the guy, they showed his book. Well, he's seen Bruiser's book. And with Bruiser, Snyder, and Vern Gagne, partners in Chicago, Brian, as we've talked about in the 60s, and Chicago coming back to somewhat of its former glory after Jack Fever got finished with it. 2 shows in Chicago, March 11th and April 15th, 1967. Dick the Bruiser as a main event wrestler and as one of the three partners in the promotion of the town. For those two shows, Bruiser made $6,400, which doesn't sound massive, but in 1967, in 2025 money, that's $61,000 for Dick the median household income in the United States for a family per year in 1967 was $7,200. He made $6,400 in 2 nights in, again, a fucking company that he owned and he could do whatever he wanted. The rest of the month was more fucking money that he got the first count on.
That's put a urinal in your house kind of money.
Boy, he pissed it away, literally. Do people even understand? Dick the Bruiser, not only in his master bedroom, not only had the biggest custom-made bed possibly in the world, his bed was 20 feet wide, but in his master bathroom, he had the only urinal in a private residence in Indianapolis because it made him feel more like he was in the locker room.
Well, that book is
but anyway.
And hold on. I got here, as you said, there's also a book, Ed Don George, The Remarkable Life of an Olympian and Pro Wrestling Champion by Dan Murphy. So for those of you into Buffalo wrestling history, and the Joel Goodhart biography, it's actually an interview that Scott Teal did with him. We wrestled, we brawled, we started it all. By Joel Goodhart and Scott Teal.
Okay, now we're basically, poor Scott, I must say, in his defense, is in this case, the transcriber and interviewer and questioner, but certainly don't blame him for anything that might be said that is in any way related to bullshit.
Well, once again, these are all available at crowbarpress.com. For everyone who gets in touch and says, how can I learn about wrestling history beyond the show? Crowbarpress.com. Mention you heard it here. You get a free Scott Teal autograph. That's the way they do it.
And you know what Dennis Corluzzo used to use as their tagline? Because their tagline in the TWA was, we wrestle, we brawl, we do it all. And Dennis said, no, it's we wrestle, we brawl, we can't fill the hall.
What do you think of Dennis's, how much of it was personal, he didn't get along with the people, and how much of it was territorial in terms of, the problems over the years, Dennis and Goodhart, Dennis and Todd Gordon, Dennis and Heyman. How much of it, because Paul Heyman and Dennis never got along. I can't speak to Todd Gordon and Dennis. I don't think they got along too much, although Todd Gordon ended up working for him at some point. Not like in the office or anything, but like as a manager.
Yeah, no, on his show. Well, no, but remember then on that big Eddie Gilbert anniversary show, that's when they walked out and blamed me because I told Dennis change the finish. Remember? He came up to me complaining. I'm sorry, this is not even where we were going, but jot it down and we'll come back there. But on one of those big Eddie Gilbert memorial shows,
it was the NWA 50th anniversary.
The NWA 50th anniversary that was in a hotel ballroom there. Help me, where was it?
It was in Philly.
In Philly, by the airport at a hotel ballroom thing.
Yeah.
And again, Dennis is there, and because he's always sweating and he's drinking tea and he's fucking, Jimmy, I got all these guys and I don't know if I'm going to do that thing. And I said, well, what's the matter? Well, he had some kind of fakakta 10-person tag team cage thing for the main event. I don't know if you may remember, you probably got the program, but it was involving Todd Gordon and invaders from whatever, I don't know what, from the local ex-ECW group or whatever. And goddamn Dennis's guys. And he said, then we did this, we did that, and now I got to pay all these guys, and Gordon wants this, and now they're going to come back with us. So I said, why are you bringing it back? If you don't like it, you don't want to do it, and you don't want to pay all these fucking people. Why are you bringing it back? He said, well, that's what they laid out. I said, well, fucking, they laid it out, or they fucking paying themselves? No, you're paying them. So you lay it out, just fucking beat them if you want to. He said, okay, I will. So he sent word he was going to beat them, and they all walked out.
Yeah, because that day there was a convention during the day, and Todd Gordon and the Sandman were holding court. You know, they had a good crowd around them. Everyone's laughing. Next thing you know, they're gone.
Yeah.
And it created a really awkward situation. That was a weird show. Ray Odyssey, I think, got like really badly concussed or something. Because next thing I know, he was like down on the ground, surrounded by paramedics in the hallway. And Missy Hyatt was like leading the way. Because at that time, I think she was training to be a paramedic, or she was a paramedic. And then because Todd left.
The next time I saw Missy, they were calling a paramedic on her.
What? No, what I was going to say.
At the Pillman Memorial.
Wait, what happened?
They called the paramedics on her and Sonny, bless them.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, I think maybe more Tammy, but it didn't look like Missy was going in the right direction either that day. And and I'm not trying to start anything, but I love Missy. But Les Thatcher came up to me and said, go talk to Missy. I said, I'm sorry, what? He said, go over there quick and talk to Missy. She's standing in the hall, like where the gym was. She's underneath the bleachers or whatever, and not out in the arena, but she's in the hallway. Just go talk to Missy and make sure she doesn't go to the ring. What? So I go out, hey, Missy, how you doing? Haven't seen you in a while, blah, blah, blah. And and she didn't look like she was trying to go to the ring. I didn't have to physically restrain her, but after a few minutes, I'm thinking, why am I just standing here? What the fuck is going on here? And I just said, Missy, stay here. I'll be right back. And I just left, and I didn't see either one of them again. I think the paramedics were called shortly after for somebody. Let me just say that. I don't want to spread any allegation.
It's interesting because the show we're talking about, when Todd left, it was Missy Hyatt that they talked into leading the heel faction against Doug Gilbert and the NWA. And they had a weird scene where, like, to somehow explain to the fans following this storyline, which was like nobody, to explain to them what's going on, Missy Hyatt all of a sudden came on to Doug, and Doug rejected it because he would never. And that started the main event match. But it was a weird era where you could see people that you had seen on TV really fucked up, because that was the day that William Regal.
I was going to ask you that, because that's why.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Because that was the day you came up to me. Funny enough, it was you and Doug Gilbert in the back of the room talking, and I was right next to you guys. And this is a cool moment for me as a teenager. You turned to me and you said, because you realized what was happening. It was Dan Severn against William Regal. William Regal had his boots on the wrong feet.
Yeah.
And you said, Brian, you're smart. And that was like the biggest compliment ever. Brian, you're smart. Go to the ring announcer and tell him in 1 minute to announce that 5 minutes have gone by. Tell him then to count another 3 minutes and announce 10 minutes have gone by. And we were just skimming time in real time. It was crazy.
Well, and again, I don't want to just dangle the incomplete story there. And we're not, again, I think William Regal has written about it, I believe, in his book. We're not trying to slander him, but one of the things that Dennis had put together for the NWA 50th anniversary was Dan Severn. Again, I can't remember where the UFC was at this point in time, probably not yet, but Dan Severn, one of the most decorated amateur or collegiate wrestlers in general that the world has ever produced and the United States has ever produced, and the former NWA champion, and he can fucking wrestle. And have him against William Regal, who at that point, Brian, we were trying because JR was there, remember?
Yeah, there were a bunch of students. You actually brought up, there was a battle royal with the students. So, I mean, there was a big WWF presence.
But we were trying to get William Regal over some way to get started in WWE or WWF at that point in time, right? or get a second chance.
Get a second chance, I think.
That's what it was, the second chance thing, and had JR come down and said, "Why he's going to wrestle, Dan Severn," and JR came down from fucking his exile in Connecticut up there, or that miserable overpriced hellhole, as he said. And as soon as they go to the ring, well, but even before, as you said, William Regal had his boots on the wrong feet and went out, and Dan later on was like, what could I have done besides just, take it and fucking, be disrespectful.
If it had been someone like Ric Flair in his prime or something, maybe they could have hit a good portion of it, because it's not like they didn't deal with situations like that at times with like Kerry Von Erich or something. But there's only so much you can do. Dan Severn, if you weren't going to carry Dan Severn, I don't know if carry's even the right word. I mean,
well, no, if
he wasn't going to lead the match.
But remember, we totally wanted him to have this wrestling match, and William Regal's trying to do all the wrestling shit, but he can't do it. And Dan is like, "What the fuck? I can't just start doing drop kicks and shit, and I could take this match, but then I'm beating the guy who didn't realize how bad he was. I'm beating him for real." And why, he just was like trying to wrestle, and it went on forever. And that's why, because I realized I can't even remember who the timekeeper, ring announcer, whoever was, but we had to send you with the directions on how. We couldn't just say shave time. We had to explain the process of the shaving of the time, because as you know, Jerry, it's not the wanting to shave the time; it's the actual shaving of the time. And then he wouldn't listen to it.
It went, and even with the shaving of the time, it went way too long. That's right.
Yeah. And then JR had to go back and report what he had seen. So
that was a cool weekend, though, because that was also Cauliflower Alley in the Northeast. So you had Fred Blassie there. You had, I think Tully Blanchard actually may have been there. You had Abdullah the Butcher. You had like a weird cast of people there. It was like a really cool wrestling weekend.
Well, all those people, thank you for that assessment of their character. Yeah, a bunch of weirdos.
When it comes to general society, looking at this group of people I just named, Fred Blassie, Abdullah the Butcher, and Tully Blanchard, yeah, they're the weirdos, I think. They may not be in real life, but, judging a book by its cover, by his gold lame outfit and the guy eating a fork, yeah, they're weird. This is your show.
No, it's not.
Well, this has been Crowbar Press Talk. Once again, crowbarpress.com. I don't know if any of these stories are in those books, but there are great stories for you to learn in those books. We talked about Cornette's collectibles. Jim?
No, we didn't.
Oh, we didn't?
We didn't say a goddamn word about it. Now that you brought it up, but I'll rectify that mistake. But I don't know what right now is on sale at JimCornette.com, because we launched the big sale over the Derby weekend, and as predicted, many of the one-of-a-kind items are and they're gone. And I thank everybody, and I'm working now with the Feather Bottom Group. They've incorporated now. It's the Feather Bottom Group Limited. But we are sorting those things now and beginning the processing of those orders. But there, I believe, are still a few of the things that we had more of left, including some of the action figures and et cetera, and some of the stuff that's on sale. So go to JimCornette.com. Corny's Vault Sale, when you click on collectibles, right on the top. And also, it came down to, do we spend time on processing these orders or spend time on pulling down all of the stuff that's sold out? If you click on something and it says sold out, don't get frustrated, but we're trying to work on both those things. But we're getting these things under control. JimCornette.com.
That's right.
That's my advice from me to you.
Well, as always, it's appreciated. But Jim, let's get going with this really fun wrestling show. Let's get going. We're 45 minutes into this nonsense. What did you see, if anything, on Smackdown that previously aired at a previous time and date?
Well, it was May the 2nd, and it's so long ago, but I just wanted to make mention that an old friend of ours has come back to television, but he's no longer Malachi Black. He's Aleister Black.
That was his old
So
name. That was his name previously in WWE.
Well, yeah, his WWE name. So Aleister Black is now back, and Malachi Black is not back because he wouldn't have been Malachi if he could have still been Aleister. Have I got a grip on this now?
I don't know what you got a grip on. I'd call a doctor. You know, if he didn't have all those tattoos, would we be talking about how skinny he is? It hit me watching this.
He's dropped weight and leaned out to look like just a badass type of
a 6'2" Adam Cole.
Well, he's no, come on now. No, come on.
6'1"?
If Aleister Black was to fucking be lost in the wilderness and die from the elements, then there would be something to nourish a wildlife creature off of his body right now. The same cannot be said for Adam Cole.
I don't know. I mean, a buzzard maybe. But a bear?
Have you seen the size of a buzzard? A buzzard couldn't. A buzzard eating Adam Cole, some other buzzard would come along and say, you're eating like a bird.
Hold on, eating Adam Cole or eating Malachi? Who's getting eaten here in this scenario that you
Well, I'm saying that if Adam Cole was eaten, he would not be enough sustenance, whereas you could live off of Aleister Black.
Depends on the animal. I don't know that. Aleister Black may be taller, but...
Well, maybe not a goddamn hippopotamus or a rhinoceros or an
those
elephant.
were the examples I was thinking of. Of course, not a hippopotamus. They're not in the wild out here.
Well, it depends on how wild you are and where you live.
There's a chance that either of them could sustain many small wildlife creatures for, a week and a half.
Okay, Adam Cole may be a gopher, chipmunk, squirrel.
They got to eat too.
Opossum.
They're God's creatures too, Jim. They got to eat too.
Well,
don't look down on them just because they're not a rhinoceros and a hippo like your favorites.
I'm just saying, you're trying to say that Aleister Black was equivalent to Adam Cole in terms of his weight loss, whereas in actuality, I'm saying he's going for the thing where he wants to show him that he's into this and he's going to be all lean and he's going to be the kickboxer type. He's got the educated feet.
We'll see what happens. But so far, my feeling is like Tony won this round, giving them back Miro and Aleister Black. I'm serious. Aleister Black had a problem with his booking in AEW. He just worked a 2-segment competitive match with The Miz.
No.
Don't complain about your AEW booking.
Well, you get ahead of yourself. I didn't even talk about this yet. But Aleister Black is back. He's back in black. And he gets the spooky music and he gets the dark lighting and the Hannibal Lecter lift up on the board that was stolen from Paul Heyman when he did that originally with Sabu, that was stolen from Hannibal Lecter when he did that for the Science of the Lambs.
Science of the Lambs, that's right.
And so that's cool. And the announcers say he's been out of the WWE for 5 years. And I'm thinking he was rotten in AEW. Is he going to be any better here? And there was no teleportation or lighting tricks or David Copperfield style allusions to his entrance. He got spooky lighting and there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. But he's in a single match with The Miz. Haven't we seen for the past 3 years that, and maybe in tag matches, he put some time in, but The Miz was flattened by a number of wrestlers, celebrities, influencers, popcorn stand vendors in about 2 minutes over and over. And they went, 10 minutes? It seemed longer. Back and forth. It wasn't unprofessional. Nobody's the shits here, but it's the fucking Miz who loses in minutes to everybody. And half of Black's shit is kicks, which are 50-50 to me on the looks. Either it's like, oh, Jesus Christ, that was kind of weird, maybe off, to Holy shit, I wouldn't stand in front of that. And I mean, it's somewhere in that range. and then, and then, oh my God, it's permanent. And then he knocked Miz out with the kick, which again, he's very good with it. I can say that about it because this one was okay. But goddamn, there's only a small little tiny, I can't even say the word to describe the thickness of the hair of the margin for error that there is in that move.
That's why they gave
and
him, that's why they gave him the Miz. If it happens, it happens.
I get a fucking forearm in the mouth. Boom, and he went down. And the other guy bends over and looks at him and says, "Oh, shit." And his brother came up and said, no, it's okay. He looked like that before. Anyway, all right.
Welcome back, Aleister Black.
He came back. And then also on SmackDown, I couldn't even make notes. Randy Orton came out and did a promo about John Cena, and Cena was not there. So it was just Randy doing a promo promoting the match. And there's, again, nothing wrong with that. And he did it. Who would have thought Randy Orton would have been? That's the one thing out of all the whole class. The only thing that is, that we didn't expect was that Orton would be a fucking great live promo for 15 minutes or whatever. But he knocked John Cena, trashed his merchandise. He says, Cena says he raised your kids. Cena, the only thing you raised was the price of your merchandise. Now these parents have to work a double to pay for it. And he assassinated Cena's character. I think that John, and I mean, I'm going to go on record with this, and I am happy to be corrected, but everybody mark it down. What number show is this of the drive-thru? So they can write it down.
391.
Drive-thru 391. Jim Cornette says John Cena's not switching back babyface before he rides off into the wrestling sunset. Because between the things that he has said and the things that people are saying about him on television, I think John has said, turn heel. Why not? When I retire next year, they don't care if I'm a heel in Hollywood and I'm not going to wrestle and what they're still going to buy my merchandise of what the fuck. I'll just be the guy that turned heel. He was a heel when he first started because he wanted to be the prototype. That was his gimmick. So I think he's just said, fuck it, I'll just do this. And he don't care because you cannot rehabilitate a fucking person from not only people saying these things about him, but him saying these things to all the fucking fans. And then in, what is it? It's May in 5 months and 3 weeks for the big blow off. Ah, shit, I'm sorry. Yeah, fuck, I've realized now. God damn it. You know, I went to therapy. How do you turn this around, or isn't it all just fake as fuck?
I don't know how you turn this around. Turn what around? How do you turn what around?
Turn it around as far as in any way portraying John Cena as a babyface, because that was the thing when he turned heel. Everybody said, well, he'll spend the year as a heel and then he'll switch back babyface for his big retirement or whatever, and then he can ride off in the sunset. I think he's riding off in the sunset with a fucking finger over his shoulder. Fuck all y'all.
He could still do it, but you may be right. He may ride off like that, but he could still do it.
I do what's
like Andre the Giant. Say? Andre the Giant. Last match, he does something. Cody beats him for the belt. Post match, The Rock comes in. He's disappointed. He pushes Cena Cena slugs The Rock, knocks him down, leaves the ring on a ring car to oblivion.
I think if Cena knocks The Rock out, they would probably cheer. But
it would be a mistake, actually, because there would be no match. There's nothing.
I was about to say that would just be, and is that all there is?
Was that all there is from SmackDown?
Certainly was.
All right, that was SmackDown. Certainly was.
3 hours. I mean, and Jacob Fatu does things, but it's difficult to suffer through 3 hours to get, I'd rather just see the Jacob Fatu clip on YouTube and be done with it. It's come to this. They've driven me to the streaming and the short attention span theater.
Well, I think there is a problem right now where WWE TV is becoming a little hard to get through again. And, you bring up Jacob Fatu. I will say I've enjoyed the Street Profits as heels lately. The problem is there's no division for them to work with. So we'll see where they go. But that was SmackDown, as you said.
Maybe they could work out some kind of trade and they could send him over to work with the Hurt Syndicate. And then both problems would be solved.
Huh. Well, Jim, while we're on this topic of...
I see you give that a lot of goddamn consideration.
While we're on the topic of WWE television, what did you watch on Raw?
Well, I'll tell you exactly what I watched on Raw as soon as I turned the page to my notepad to remind myself what I watched on the Raw. And again, this program is 2 hours and 30 some minutes, usually most weeks, and was again this week. And boy, howdy, they got they got the main event deal going, and then there's a significant drop off. But the main event deal, Paul Heyman, Seth Franklin Rollins, and Braun Badass Breaker as this new incredible heel group, and they recapped last week with what they did to poor old Sami Zayn. Just beat him up and just left him just like a government mule, as JR would say. And then they come to the crowd shot. Have you ever seen 11,558 people in Omaha, Nebraska? But are they shooting this thing with a fisheye lens? It looked like there was 25,000 people in this fucking place, just everywhere. What's going on here, Brian? Is this computer generated? Is this Al's at work here?
I don't think this is A1. I think this is just the drone shot, and you can get a fisheye view, or you could get various different views. And of course, it is a almost full house. It looks good. I don't know what else you want me to say.
A fisheye view. It's all the little fishies, and it looked like a big bucket of guppies just wiggling around when Jey Uso came out, and they're yeeting and they're waving. Jesus, Mary and Joseph. They yeet and wave. Do they ever get tired? These people work harder in the stands than most of the guys do in the ring. It's just they're so happy. Are they spiking the arenas? Does the real American beer that they're pitching on the logo on the canvas, are they putting fucking happy juice in that stuff? A little Valium, a little lithium? What is the stuff that makes the kids happy these days? The ketamine?
Well, I don't know if that's the stuff that makes the people buying these tickets happy. I don't know why anyone is happy after paying that price for those tickets. I don't get it. I don't get it at all.
We've been talking about, everybody's talking about the ticket prices are higher than ever. They've got almost 12,000 people in fucking Omaha that have paid hundreds of dollars each to be there. And the guy comes in, they love him, and they're fucking yeeting. And they started yeeting again. They stopped the music, but he revs it up and they yeet again for a yeet reprise. And it was 10 minutes and 27 seconds. Jey Uso spoke his first word into the show. And he was blown up. And he calls out very briefly Logan Paul, but suddenly he gets the wrong Paul. because out comes Paul Heyman. And he's already got the microphone, and the people do my name is Paul Heyman, and it echoes. They love that. And he talks his way to the ring. And before we talk about the content of this, one must mention, Brian, you brought it up before when the whole bloodline was unraveling back in the day, back in the long ago, the before time. You said, look, Heyman, when he shows he's stressed, he won't shave. He looks pale. You got dark circles under his eyes, or he's unkempt in some fashion. He's really a method type of guy with the way he looks. What explains that he got in the ring looking like the AEW spray tan artist had fucking went to work on his goddamn giant cranium?
Why is this a surprise to you? I think he's a pioneer in wrestling in terms of makeup and making himself orange or another color. He did it on TBS and for WCW all the time, didn't he?
But he just said, has he ever been? It's like they were ribbing somehow. They didn't do the side of his neck. There was a clear delineation between the darkness of his jowl and the lightness of when he turned sideways and the light struck it, you could see. But nevertheless, he looked like a bald Godfrey Cambridge. It was off-putting. Google that, kids, and it'll be fucking hilarious. It was off-putting, wasn't it? He was so... And then when he got cranked up, I'm sure that prevented us from seeing that his face had turned so red that he was about to have a pulmonary embolism. But anyway.
Yes.
Yes. What?
Yeah. I did at one point while he was talking. I did think, wow, he's really, considering he got more worked up in this promo than any promo I can think of in recent memory. To the point where you're like, yeah, this may not be healthy for a guy his size to get as worked up as he is. But it was I think it was actually one of his best promos ever.
Oh, no, that's the thing. Well, we're going to get to this. Is when he gets cranked up, this is one of the best things he's ever done. But again, we do have to worry about his health. But maybe, instead of dying with your boots on like a marshal in the Old West for a wrestling manager, it's dying in the middle of a promo. But anyway, he cranked up on Jey Uso by telling him, you think I betrayed your family? Oh, no. My best friend, CM Punk. And as soon as he'd mention somebody's name, they would chant for him. But Punk put me in a position where it would sabotage my relationship with Roman Reigns to do this favor. And Roman, I wasn't going to betray him. And then, of course, in Paul's backhanded way, I picked a stray big dog on the island of irrelevancy and turned him into the tribal chief, and he blew it. He blew it, not me. And he disappeared and left me to get put through a table. It's such odd terminology if you're not with it in wrestling. I'm wondering if we should think about all saying to fucking throw me through a piece of furniture or something less, maybe even more descriptive, but nevertheless. He put me through the fucking table and he didn't come back to get even for me. He came back to get the Ulafala. And he worked himself. You blame me? Screw you. And screw you fans for booing me. And he was just, his eyes were popping out and it was fucking great, right? And technically, he was very
He's making
correct
sense
in everything he said. Yes,
right.
He was. The indignance was not. Well, it was not fake, but it was a work. But it was. You could feel the indignance. It seemed to hang heavy over him. And the people start chanting, you suck, and then asshole. And then Paul's leaning over the rope and he's composing himself. And Jay said, okay, but what does all that have to do with me? And Paul then apologized. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say that. I just also came to talk. to you. The title that you have, it's about power and control, and you don't know how to use it. And you need to be champion, but Seth has to be champion. And Braun Breaker may have been stage 1, but stage 2 is that title. So I'll let you pick the night that you lose the World Heavyweight Championship, because Seth Rollins is challenging you anytime, any place. And then Jay bows up at Paul, who then quivers backwards, looking somewhat like the 1958 classic The Blob, starring Steve McQueen, being projected in reverse into the turnbuckles. And Jay says, let's make it tonight. Yeet! And we got our main event. And yes, again, the applause of your new noise filter will take out my goddamn sound applause, but applause for Paul.
We heard your sound applause.
Well, you hold on, let me see what does this sound like here. Where'd my applause?
My sound applause.
Well, my sound applause.
Oh, yeah, there it cut out. There we go.
Does that come through? It's still going. I don't know. You're filtering all of my goddamn. Just because I have the sour belches every now and then, you got these new audio.
Well, we could add the belches in post production. That's one of the things that we could do.
All righty. Well, I didn't ask for belches.
The sound applause.
The sound applause.
The night that Frank Burrell got on the mic because of the loser kisses the other one's feet match and said, "I'm not happy with this foot and kiss."
Who was it that said? Wait a minute now. There was a promo in the late 70s. I'm trying to remember who it was. It may have been the Gibson brothers talking about David Schultz and Dennis Condrey, where Ricky Gibson may have said, "We're going to go through you like a hot butter through knife." But sometimes these things happen.
Well, sometimes these things happen, Jim, when people are tired, and maybe that explains a lot with Paul Heyman here. The appearance, the bad decision making, whatever it may be. A good night's sleep could take care of a lot of that. It's been said that a good night's sleep can make you feel good, give you energy, and give you all sorts of benefits that I can't make any declaration about, but I've heard these things. And Jim, I think it's time for our people to hear other things from you about our friends at Helix Sleep.
Well, I'll tell you what, there's certain things that we can't promise you, ladies and gentlemen, but so we can't say it for a fact, but a lot of people talking about it. And that is that you can upgrade your old mattress, the lumpy, the thing that may have been urinated upon, depending on the age of everybody that's ever been on the mattress, or any of your physical characteristics. Or it may have been pooped upon, because who at one point or another has not had one of those issues? The goddamn, the take-home pizza just wasn't baked all the way, and you thought you just wanted to expel some pressure, and the next thing you know, you're going for the sheets and the towels, ripping them off the bed. Who hasn't had that happen? And that reflects on your mattress, doesn't it, Brian? That will reflect on, especially if you use the black light. So what you need to do is you need to get off that. And do you realize, Brian, that I saw on the internet, so it must be true, that the average mattress over the course of a year collects approximately 6 pounds of dust and dust mites. And that means that if you've had that mattress for 10 years, well, you're going to give yourself a hernia just getting rid of it. So you need to start now. If I were you, I'd take a bandsaw or something and just cut that thing down the middle, make it easier to get the fuck out of there, and then throw it out your window. The city will come and collect it, ladies and gentlemen, and go to helixsleep.com right now and pick out your new mattress that doesn't have 6 pounds of microscopic insects, along with fecal matter, urinary stains, and don't forget in allergy season, How many times you think you've snotted on your current mattress in the middle of the night, ladies and gentlemen? And don't tell me that the sheet was on it. It's a porous piece of fabric. That snot's dripping right through and it's settling into that fucking...
Don't you use a pillow?
Top mattress, huh?
Don't you use a pillow?
What about when you turn over and you're face down in the mattress and you're going... All that shit's going and out your mouth, just the dribble and the fucking stench of you all over that mattress.
These are not symptoms or...
The sheet will not protect you. The sheet will not protect you because it's porous fabric. You put some poop on a sheet, you see what drips through. Put your baby's head. Put a sheet over your baby's head.
No, it's not.
No, I'm talking about over the top of your baby, just over your baby. Hold out a sheet where your baby's sitting over the top of her, and then pour poop on that sheet.
No, you see, I had you with no. No was good enough.
Because then, well, see, do you trust it? Do you trust that sheet?
This has nothing to do with the sheets. We're talking about the beds.
I'm not talking about solid fiber-induced poop. I'm talking about the poop that's going to get on your mattress in the middle of the night when you haven't baked the calzone fully, and it just happens, and then you realize and jump up too late. And that sheet's not going to protect that mattress. Get them all out of your house.
Thankfully,
get them out of your house.
We're not talking about sheets. What we're talking about are brand new, clean mattresses that come.
That's what I'm talking about.
For you. From our friends at Helix Sleep. They don't cure any of these conditions that you're...
People have to get on this right now. You got to go to helixsleep.com and pick your new mattress because you're sleeping in filth, ladies and gentlemen. And I mean, y'all know it's true. You know, everything I've said's happened. So just take this day to change your life and sleep on something that doesn't stink. When you really get down and think about it, you can spray it all day long, but you know it's still there. And go to helixsleep.com and pick a mattress that's right for you, whether you sleep on a soft surface or a firm surface, or you're hot when you sleep, and maybe you're just sweating because you're getting some kind of microbiotic infection off of the goddamn Petri dish that you're laying in. You get a brand new Hela and they'll bring it right in. You don't have to saw it in half with a bandsaw and throw it out the window. That's the old mattresses. That's the old way of doing things. The new one, it comes right in a box, and one person can maneuverate it to the place that it goes, and then you just unbox it, and poof, it becomes, and it'll be so fresh and clean and lovely. And then get you some rubber sheets, too. Because, you know, then it's up to you. And think about all the things that go wrong with your body over the course of the year.
Once again, it's up to you. We cannot focus on that right now. We don't have to focus on it right now. What we can focus on is a great deal for mattresses, because that's exactly what Helix has. Not rubber sheets, but mattresses. Jim, how can the listeners get a great mattress that they will love the same way me and my family love our Helix Sleep mattresses? And I know they're very popular in Castle Cornette.
Yes. Well, you know, without saying all of those things, you could have just said, how can we get this cleanliness that we can lay our bodies down in and sleep like we're sleeping in clouds of angels with the harp music and potentially corn on the cob, whatever they eat up there in heaven land. You can sleep like that, and it'll be brand new and not have any type of the other bad things on it. And you can save money because it's almost Memorial Day. And in memoriam of all the people who die of being smelled to death by sleeping on a stinky old mattress, that's 0.3% of the deaths in the state of Michigan. People sleeping on stinky mattresses.
Well, again, we don't have. Let's not talk about statistics that are not backed up with facts or data or anything else. But let's tell the people.
Well, I'm backing up on it. I think it's more like 4% now that I think about it.
What can the listeners do?
Here's what you can do now.
Yes.
There, you can go to helixsleep.com/JCE and get early access to the Memorial Day sale. We are talking, ladies and gentlemen, 27% off site-wide and a free bedding bundle, which is a sheet set and mattress protector. See, what am I telling you? With any Luxe or Elite mattress order. And that's exclusive for the listeners of the Jim Cornette Experience right here on the program or the drive-thru, whichever program that you're listening, our listeners, yours and mine, the royal we, 27% off side-wide in the free bedding bundle. So you get your sheet set, but you also get a mattress protector. So you have your Kate and Edith too, you rascal you. 27% off in the free bedding bundle. How can they do that? How can they even? It's because it's early access to the Memorial Day sale just for our people. Your people and my people. That's whose people.
Yeah,
people.
Let's wrap it up for the people one more time.
There you
Jim.
go. One
What's
more
that
time.
promo
Helix
code?
Sleep. HelixSleep.com/JCE.
You know what that means, Jim? It's the breaking news update. We're coming out of Helix Sleep. We're awake. And apparently things are happening in the wrestling world concerning something we just spoke about. And of course, that man is the immortal Hulk Hogan.
Well, I thought you were going to say that man is the immortal Benjamin Shelton.
Benjamin Shelton.
The folks may recall, if they've been up on the programming, if they've been listening, Hulk Hogan recently blurted out of his ass that all of the hot shot, badass amateur wrestlers and real shooters and dangerous type of people that he's in the ring with, he's been in the ring with, he got Brock Lesnar right out of the UFC. No, he got him right out of OVW. Is where he got him before he'd ever fucking heard of the goddamn UFC. And at the same time, he also mentioned that noted amateur great from the University of Minnesota, Benjamin Shelton. And many people also pointed out, which I guess we didn't need to bring up, but didn't at the time, that out of all the people he mentions, he can't get the black guy's name right.
Well, I mean, the big thing is that we've now learned it wasn't an isolated incident. There's now audio of a second incident where he calls him Benjamin Shelton. So that's what's making it go around today. I couldn't believe it.
Oh, yeah.
Because now there's a little compilation video of the two different times he said it.
Yes, we retweeted I retweeted the tweet that you tweeted about the twit. The twat that can't. But anyway, so there has been an official response, is what we're trying to beat around the bush and say.
Well,
from
somewhat
the
official.
camp of,
so it's from Shelton Benjamin, the wrestler. I don't know what he has to do with Benjamin Shelton, to be quite honest.
Well, he's the agent of Benjamin Shelton, because Benjamin Shelton is a shell corporation, actually formed for tax purposes off the Isle of Man. But Shelton Benjamin is the chief executive officer of said corporate. It's a side business he's got in addition to the Hurt Syndicate. But Shelton Benjamin, we will quote, message to @Hulk Hogan. You lost me forever with your, quote, don't get caught, unquote, or as you would call it, quote unquote, apology speech. So rather than screw up my name and pretend we ever had any sort of camaraderie, which we never had, please do me a favor. And then there is the meme, the video, the GIF or whatever of Will Smith saying, keep my name out of your fucking mouth. With the subtitle, just in case you can't read his lips.
Technically, he is.
Yeah.
That's the workaround. What's his problem? I didn't even say his name. I'm talking about some other guy.
Who's the other guy? I thought it was him.
Benjamin Shelton. When I first started out, I was working with Brazil Bobo all over the place.
And then there was Gracie Hoyce. I fought him in Argentina in front of 172,000 people.
So you know Shelton Benjamin. How do you think he takes this when it first happened? Is it something he would laugh at? Is it something that he would be annoyed by? I mean, obviously at this point, he's a little annoyed, maybe more because of the context of Hogan using his name.
No, I think he's more than a little bit annoyed. No, Shelton Benjamin would consider, if somebody screwed up his name, where it came from, if it was the the kind of goofy little kid in the amateur class that, whatever, he would laugh at that because he's got a good sense of humor and he doesn't take himself seriously as a goddamn superstar. There's no Shelton Benjamin magazine like there's a Monet magazine or whatever. He's got a sense of humor, but if it's goddamn Hulk Hogan, who and repeatedly botches his name just because he couldn't be bothered to learn the name of a guy that he worked with, one would think that Hogan would have some knowledge of the wrestling industry. And I don't think he's amused. I don't think Shelton's amused at all. And I also think that Hulk Hogan better keep his name out of his fucking mouth because look at the two of, Hulk Hogan, when he was 27 years old, would last approximately fucking 16 seconds with Shelton now if Shelton stopped to pose first.
Oh, come on. Which one of them's the commissioner of RAF Wrestling? Is it Shelton? Is it Benjamin? Or is it Hulk Hogan? And that's what this is all about. He's on a press tour.
And look at, he's the figurehead of an amateur wrestling league. And here's a standout amateur wrestler that could put a ham sandwich on his back and starve him to death. And he don't know his name.
And just so the listeners who are not aware of this can know, here's the 22-second highlight video that's out there. Let's play this audio so you can hear the living exhibit.
Great guys like Kurt Angle and Brock Lesnar, they're Benjamin Shelton. There's some really tough guys. Really crazy wrestlers like.
Well, that was the first interview. Again, brief clip from the Pat McAfee show. And now here's Hulk Hogan on TMZ.
I got Brock Lesnar right after he left the UFC. I got him first. I got Kurt Angle when his eyeballs used to roll back like a shark and he'd come after me. Benjamin Shelton, all these different guys that I've had the opportunity to see adapt to our business.
You know what he's doing is he's written down notes of, they've put so much thought into this and careful planning. And this has been a dream of his that's finally coming to fruition for so long. As he's doing a media tour, he has to write down and memorize notes of the goddamn only three guys that he even has bothered to notice had an amateur background so that he can compare his business of pro wrestling some way to what the fuck he's trying to con the people out of now. Is basically what's happening here, is it not?
Isn't this insulting to the legacy of Jack Briscoe that he doesn't get mentioned by Hogan?
And that's another thing is Jack Briscoe, when Hogan started in Florida, was the epitome of the shooter. And Jack Briscoe, actually, to be quite honest, was an NCAA champion. That same thing as Angle. That's that right. Was above Shelton's level at that point. That was, pretty rare air. But the point is, people today don't remember who the NCAA wrestling champion was in the 70s. So he's not going to mention Jack Briscoe. He's going to mention names that he thinks people know. And he could think of three, and he got one wrong.
Do you think one of the problems with this RAF, one of the problems, I'm not saying this is the problem or an isolated problem, one of the problems is there's like no way to really get, I don't know, I've watched amateur wrestling. The finishes aren't really great. Like, it's exciting when you see the person jumping up and down and celebrating, but like the referee looking for the pin, the angle they're at, it's just, if you're used to pro wrestling, it's an adjustment. It's not necessarily an exciting end.
Well, and that's... Again, it's kind of like maybe what pro wrestling is now, the concept with completely different execution. If you are really into amateur wrestling and understand the scoring system and understand what's going on in front of you, that it can be very exciting. And for the places historically, the Midwest, the Iowas and Nebraskas and, places that produce top amateur wrestling, that's, a thing that they like. But pro wrestling is rapidly getting to that point, unless you really are into it enough to understand everything that's going on and overlook some things and potentially sit through a lot of slow spots. Just completely different execution, but it's starting to be the same kind of thing. You got to really kind of be into it.
Considering this is all Hogan, and he gets a lot of attention for this stuff, for good or for bad, should AEW use this? The Hurt Syndicate use it too? I mean, it benefits them. Just something on the air, Hulk Hogan, go fuck yourself. And then you move on and you do your stuff with MJF, but is it worth even mentioning on the air because of how much attention you could possibly get? Because Hogan can't fire back. What's he going to say? Hey, Bobby Lashley, I'll kick your ass. Like, he can't say anything.
Well, I kind of see, here's the problem is that you got so many inflammatory opinions over there in the AEW, brain trust as to whether they should or should mention competition or do these things. And sometimes people get to make cute remarks and other times they don't. I don't know at this point if I was MVP, if I might not just issue an open offer. We understand that some of our compadres, our brethren in the professional wrestling industry are branching out, trying to be involved in amateur wrestling, of which we all have some degree of background in as well. And we'd be more than happy if you would like to come here and put any athlete against my men or whatever. Go ahead. What are you going to say?
I'll tell you what, Hogan. We won't put you in there against Lashley because you know what Lashley will do to you and you know what Benjamin Shelton will do to you, and he's ready to do it. He hates you. Let the world know it. I'm just a manager, but I'm able to handle myself. Yo, MJF, you want to prove yourself? Take down this old man. And just MJF finally takes down Hulk Hogan, wrestling style. Freestyle.
Yeah, that requires Hulk Hogan. that requires Hulk Hogan to show up. What I'm thinking about is, I like where you were going there. What about if MVP says, if any of these so-called wrestlers from this new league want to face either member of the Hurt Syndicate, then we'll be glad to give you a ring and an opportunity here. But if the figurehead, if he was, I'm just a manager and he's, there's some way to denigrate him as a figurehead. I don't even know if he wants to mention his name or not. Everybody might know, is it the wink, wink, whatever the fuck. But he could say, I'll take you on, just give me 5 minutes.
Someone said, I'm going to put up the money for this thing and let's get Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff. We'll get some publicity. And the publicity they've gotten has been half, Hulk Hogan's full of shit, and the other half, Hulk Hogan looks sick. Like, this is not what you want for the commissioner of this league.
But anyway, that's the latest conflict. I would imagine we're not going to hear back from the former Terry Bollea.
I know Shelton was there. Forgive me for not remembering. Did Hulk Hogan ever actually work a match with Shelton? Even if it was a tag match? Maybe that's the only way it would be if it was Team Angle, him and Charlie Haas against Hogan, Edge or something.
They've obviously been in the same. They were in the same. Hulk Hogan's match with Brock Lesnar was in 2002.
Right. They were there at the same time. That's right.
Yes, they've been there at the same time. They don't necessarily have to have goddamn wrestled each other. I remember some of these fucking lunatics that I was in a locker room with a few times 30 years ago, much less somebody that was featured on national television from the company that primarily employs Hulk Hogan whenever he is employed gainfully. It's just ridiculous.
They should just.
He wrote down notes and he memorized them, and he fucked it up at first. That's why he's fucking it up every time until somebody's got the daggum balls to tell him to his face, "Hey, you're fucking this guy's name up." Mate, well, since Shelton just added him, I wonder if he's looking, going, "Well, what the fuck? What's he mad at me for? I was talking about him."
I think they should cut promos on him every week on AEW TV. It would help the ratings. If you knew every week someone was going to cut a promo on Hulk Hogan, and you knew that every week there was going to be like an awkward several days where Hulk Hogan doesn't comment on it, but everyone knows he knows about it, that's a ratings winner. But that's the news of some sort. We are now going to return to WWE Raw on Netflix. Jim, we talked about the opening segment, again, an all-timer from Paul Heyman in terms of a promo confronting Jey Uso, but that wasn't the end of the story.
That's right. Let's talk about the match that it set up for the World Heavyweight title between Seth Franklin Rollins and Jey Uso, which was the main event and of course, Seth had Paul and Braun. You got to watch they're the free birds in Mid-South now. You got to watch just for these three. And Seth was trying very hard. Jey Uso, as we've talked about, is not the smoothest in the ring. They're trying to give him more time in this position, but it's a timing thing with the blocking and the punching and the kick. It's a timing thing, but the people love him. And he's trying his best. He's just a determined young man. And they started hitting some false finishes and getting big pops out of it. Jay got the spear big pop on a 2 count. And Seth hit a big superplex and most of a stomp, which the announcers kind of had to call too. He didn't get all of it, but he got a big pop on the 2 count. And then Sammy's music starts playing. And Sammy comes out and jumps off the railing and jumps Braun Breaker and runs Braun into the post. And Seth is distracted. And that's when Jay hits a spear and goes to the top and hits a splash and gets another 2 count and a big pop. And both of them are selling. And then Braun on the outside on the floor gets back up and spears Sammy. And Seth goes down to help Sammy. Are you all right? When Paulie draws the referee, Braun spears Jay on the floor. And then they throw Jay in the ring. And fucking Seth gets him and he stomps him in the ring. And right as he hits the stomp, come on, lady in Omaha, coming to the ring with a chair. It's the cult of we finally got Punk on this show. We had 2 minutes left. And Punk just came out and just wore Braun and Seth out with the fucking chair. We got a huge CM Punk chant. And the heels bailed and took off, and the baby faces were standing in the ring staring at them, and we went off the air. So is that the equivalent of the Saturday Night Live episode where they dropped the cow? Where they said, how are we going to get out of this? Well, fuck it. Just send Punk out for 2 minutes to beat everybody up with a fucking chair.
Well, you know, the best
people loved it.
The best Paul Heyman stuff doesn't have a finish.
Never has a finish. It's just
chaos. We'll see you next time. All right. It worked last time. But that was
yeah.
Yeah, that was
Did you see the debate? Was it a debate or was it a meaningful exchange of thoughts between Gunther and Pat McAfee?
It was, you know, I don't know. I didn't really like it. You know, again, the whole pretending Michael Cole is the greatest of all time thing, blow me. That's the stupidest fucking thing.
Well, now, come on. All you get, the most preposterous thing that you got out of this was that they said Michael Cole was the greatest of all time.
That is a Hulk Hogan level lie.
But just the whole thing. Pierce introduced, ladies and gentlemen, McAfee and Gunther so they could come in the ring and talk to each other face to face. And Pat McAfee, bless him, I'm telling you, he would have won high school debate instantly. He prepares material and he gives speeches and he could run for office. He puts the town over. I mean, I'm telling you. But this just went on, and it's just people at some point talking to each other, talking about each other to each other's face, even though Gunther told him off at the end. First of all, McAfee has to be being paid by the Chamber of Commerce because the speech about Omaha, and nobody beats their meat, ladies and gentlemen. And they host the College Baseball World Series since 1950. And And he tells Gunther that both of them grew up idolizing the superstars, and it's still a dream for me, but it's a job for you, and you've got too comfortable. And you're going to underestimate me on Saturday after all this whole soliloquy of thing. And then Gunther cut right in his face, and I love Gunther, but you just got me in the right mood. I promise you my full and undivided attention on. I'm going to maul you. I'm going to choke you out until you drop like a wet towel. And on Saturday, only the grace of God can lift my arms off your throat. And then he just walked out. But two things. Number one, very, very, I'm just tired of people just talking endlessly to each other about their shortcomings, and the other guy has to just stand there. And secondly, I believe at this point, Gunther has to kill him, doesn't he? Doesn't he have to kill him?
Well, we'll discuss
Graveyard dead?
We'll discuss that with the preview of the pay-per-view coming up in a little bit. When you see McAfee in these segments, and again, he knows what to say and how to say it and when to say it to get the fans on his side. He's really good at it. Is it still worth it, him just being a commentator for half the year, or do you want him to be more of a part-time performer of some sort during that time, just because of the... No, but just because, he's performing here on the mic. We haven't seen him wrestle a match in a while. I'm sure it'll be great. I'm sure he'll do a backflip off the top rope, but he gets ready for it the same way like a Logan Paul or any of these guys would. What do you see as the pluses and minuses of Pat McAfee as a commentator versus as a regular performer while he's there?
Well, hold on. Let's not go from never having a match to even a regular performer, but just at this point, wrestling. I recall a couple years ago, we said, boy, he did a really good job for his first match or his second match. Or how many matches has he had at this point? Has he maybe had 3? Because
2 or 3, yeah.
I don't remember a lot. But I think that the phenom category there has probably been overtaken by Logan Paul in terms of holy shit. Didn't McAfee, I think I mentioned this the other day on a show, didn't he do a deal where he almost entered the Rumble last year, but then creeped in and then was just scared with dirty looks and jumped out on his own or something like that? He's been being portrayed as an announcer. And yes, he got up to defend Michael Cole, but then he got choked out. I think they need to capitalize on the goodwill he has with people liking him and not completely make him look like just a goddamn jack-off. But I don't think this is something where they need to say suddenly McAfee's going to step in after not having a match in a year or whatever and having 2 matches at all just because he has played in the NFL and is going to be competitive for 10 or 15 minutes with Gunther unless they're just fucking crazy. And I think that it ought to be hot and brief at the start for Pat, and then I think they ought to cut Pat off and waltz him across Texas, as the big cat ought to say, or used to say, and maybe let him try to come back and get some and then shut him down and then fucking kill him and have the referee stop it.
Well, that was WWE Raw on Netflix. There was lots of other stuff on there too. Becky Lynch and Lyra Valkyrie, but I know is it Valkyria?
Oh, God damn it.
And I know you didn't watch that, so that was Raw.
She is a bowl of oatmeal, is what she is, with no sugar. Just sitting there.
Jim, on the topic of WWE, let's quickly preview this coming weekend as we are recording's pay-per-view event, or premium live event, Backlash. Backlash 2025, which is what you feel when you realize how quickly they're doing the turnaround on these pay-per-views.
Actually, it's more like reflux. They ought to call it reflux.
Here are the official announced matches as of now. Again, the pay-per-view is this weekend, but there's always time and there's Smackdown. For the Intercontinental Championship, the champion Dominic Mysterio versus Penta.
You know, I saw this graphic and I was thinking that's, I think, what they're going to do I don't know if they're going to do it right now, but it wouldn't even hurt Dominic if suddenly Penta swooped in and won the Intercontinental title. They may want Dominic to run with it because he, it was a great moment, but it may be more in keeping with Dominic that he can't beat Penta and Penta takes it and he's got something to elevate him since he's a newcomer, and then Dominic can try to fucking cheat him afterwards. I don't know. What do you think? You keep your ear to the gray. You're Dr. Lucha. Your ear.
No, I'm not. I am not Dr. Lucha. Don't call me that.
What are the odds down in Guadalajara? What are they saying?
I'm Dr. Lucha. I'm going to steal Jamie Ward's car. No, what they're saying is, I don't know if anyone's saying anything. Obviously, the AAA relationship is there. The Judgment Day are having their.
Well, I mean, what's the smart money on down there, and the
smart
people
money
that know these type of things? Who do they think's going to win between Penta and Dominic?
The smart money's buying a new couch and gonna relax. I don't have an answer for you. I have no prediction whatsoever. I will be happy with any outcome and surprised as any fan would be.
I'll file out silently and give you no trouble.
Jim, the next match is a fatal four-way match.
Oh, Christ.
For the WWE United States Championship, the champion Jacob Fatu versus LA Knight versus Damian Priest versus Drew McIntyre.
Yes, and they've got Drew in there, but there's been stuff going on with LA Knight and Priest on TV the last week or two that, again, because they're all interconnected, they're holding each other down. That Drew and Fatu are the stars of this. LA Knight keeps getting hung up in something with, I don't know, the combination to me, I'm less excited about seeing this than I would be about seeing two singles matches, possibly involving the members of this.
Yeah, Damian Priest is becomes less and less interesting to me by the week.
I think Jacob Fatu has to win.
Yeah.
Or at least retain.
Yeah.
Yeah. But hopefully Drew will get back in the mixture of someone else on an individual basis. He's best when he's one-on-one.
Not to say it necessarily applies to this match, but do you think there should be a thought about turning LA Knight heel because of how many baby faces they have and who they have? Would you get more value out of him right now as a heel, or should he stay a babyface?
Well, at this point, I don't know anybody would notice because they're cheering for everybody, but while they're still cheering for him, maybe he could come out and, just drop some baby face on their head and they'd cheer that, and then he could lick his finger and point in the air and they'd go LA Knight, and he might get closer to the top of the card at this point. I just like to see him drop more meaningful people on their heads than the ones that he's been allowed to drop.
Well, Jim, the next match, Gunther versus Pat McAfee.
Well, and as I said earlier, I hate to chew my food twice, but then again, if they're listening on YouTube because they have short attention spans, yes, I think you've got to protect McAfee's standing as a former professional athlete and a full-grown adult man and not just make him look like a fucking like Paul E, for heaven's sake, physically begging off from people. But he can't be competitive over the long run. Open hot, give him a flurry where he surprises Gunther, let Gunther shut him down and waltz him across Texas again. And then comes the big comeback, but then Gunther shuts him down and he just, without even choking him out, he just beats him brutally until the referee says, fuck, you just don't do this anymore. You're going to fucking hurt him, and just stops the whole goddamn thing. And then somebody else comes out to intervene that hopefully might be his next long-term program. And McAfee looks like a warrior that went out there and tried, but how can you blame a guy that's only had 2 matches in his life and hadn't wrestled in a year and a half or 2 years, however long it's been, for not being able to fucking hang with this big fucker, and he cheated. And the sun was in McAfee's eyes. Whatever. He tried, but Gunther made good on his promise and, also is a goddamn badass.
How long should it go? If you're saying Gunther should win, how long?
Well, it depends on how much, goddamn, as we used to say, Marcel Marceau they put in it, where they want to sell that Gunther's walking around fucking in charge of him and denigrating him and humiliating him and all that stuff. But if they're having a 15-minute match bell to bell and McAfee's not been selling or bloody for the last 5 minutes of it, something the fuck is wrong.
Jim also announced for Backlash for the Women's Intercontinental Championship, the champion Lyra Valkyria versus Becky Lynch.
Becky Lynch is over and the people like her and she can talk and she's got the oomph and the enthusiasm. And I see our girl Lyric there trying. She doesn't have a happy face. She looks like she's got an earnest but sometimes confused face on from what I've seen. But I don't see people jumping up and down for her. Do you? The birds of prey or birds of war entrance outfit, and it just she's not connecting. I don't see it. Do you? Do you see it? Do you see it, Brian?
I thought the promo on Raw, she got a better reaction coming out than I thought she was going to get. And she had a couple good lines, but she's still figuring out her way. Becky Lynch obviously is very secure in being Becky Lynch. Who do you think's going to win?
I would go for Becky Lynch.
The main event for the undisputed WWE Championship, John Cena, the champion, versus Randy Orton.
Well, it's hard not to think that John Cena will retain here since he just won the goddamn thing, right? And what would they do for the rest of the fucking year? Oops. So they've done as good a job as they can of talking him into the building on this thing. And Randy's RKO'd him a couple times or whatever, but I think we know what Randy looks like, and he's been having great matches when he's put in a position to. And John's was more about the drama of the moment and the story and the whole thing at WrestleMania than what he looked like at his athletic prime, who still may not have been the equal of Danny Hodge. So they're going to have a smart match. It's going to be very professionally done in most aspects. The question is, will John be able to keep his end of the fucking deal up here with, how he looked at WrestleMania, but not that much of the story involved. You see what I'm saying? So that's going to determine how good the match is. And some way or another, I would believe Cena would still be champion on the other side of it.
When should Cody Rhodes reappear?
Hopefully quickly. Because unless he's been in a severe fucking helicopter wreck, that may be a believable story the way things are going these days. Where the fuck is he? After doesn't he have to come out and say, I'm sorry, I fucked up. Why did I fall for that? That type of thing. Or something to mitigate. See, those are sounds that I just make now when I don't have English words to convey my frustration.
Well, those are the matches that we have so far. 5 matches for a pay-per-view this weekend.
It's better than 13 of them, though, isn't it?
Well, don't worry.
In the long run.
There'll be nice 45-minute breaks in between each match for you to go outside and get some popcorn and do everything else. But, Jim, you said something very interesting. You brought up sounds, interesting sounds, and you were making some, and there's some over here, there's some over there.
They're everywhere.
The sound isn't the issue. The sound getting to you is the issue. You need something to properly play the sound the way it's meant to be heard in a comfortable and easy-to-own fashion. I'm saying a bunch of things because you're about to tell everyone about Raycon.
The delivery of the sound is more important than the existence of the sound. If it's sound you can't hear because it's not being delivered to your ears, then that sound for you is no good. But if the sound that you hear is being delivered to your ears by these earbuds right over here, well, then happy day. That's what you meant to say, wasn't it, Brian?
Happy day. Yes.
Happy day. So, folks, the Raycon everyday earbuds, Father's Day is coming up. Mother's Day is coming up. If your grandparents are still alive, they may want to listen to these things. Maybe they're deaf and you got to get the sounds real close to their eardrums. Well, just stick these in Grandma and Grandpop's ears and turn it up to 11 and watch them jam out to some fucking Zeppelin, man.
Maybe not up to 11.
I did that to this old lady at the mall, and her eyes just rolled back in her head, and she fell over into the fountain.
He didn't do that to anyone, and if he did do it, it wasn't with Raycon. It was with Brand X. Raycon is there for you. Raycon is the brand of the people, and of course, they fit comfortably in your ear. They play the sounds that you want to hear, whether they are talk or music. Jim, Raycon.
Old lady in the fountain. The most important things about the Raycons are not the 32-hour battery life, the multi-point connectivity, the quick charge function that gives you 90 minutes of battery on 10 minutes of charging. It's not even the active noise cancellation, which is often difficult from what they say to find at such an accessible, father-friendly price point for Father's Day as the Raycons. But none of those things are the most important. The most important thing, you know what the most important thing is, Brian? They're not made out of stainless steel like some of the other brands. They're plastic. You know why that's important? Because you've heard on the news, they've had epidemics in all the large cities. People will walk down the street behind somebody with earbuds, and they will hold up a magnet to their sides of their head, and boop, boop, the earbuds just shoot right out of your ears. And they make off with them down the street on a bicycle.
Again,
sometimes one of those hoverboards.
This has not been seen on any news that I've
If you don't want to chase a son of a bitch on a hoverboard to get your earbuds back, get rid of the stainless steel earbuds.
Hoverboard.
And all the metal earbuds, and go for these Raycon everyday plastic earbuds, because then when the guy holds the magnet up beside your head, all you'll lose is the occasional earring and possibly a metal plate covering that brain injury. But folks, they're not going to pull Raycon everyday earbuds out of your head with a magnet. And they come in a spectrum of vibrant colors to match Dad's vibe. I thought it was actually Mom's vibe, but I guess when the kids found it, their mom said, "That's Dad's." Anyway, if your dad is not liking his Raycons, they got a 30-day happiness guarantee return policy. No questions asked. If you try to take Mom's vibe back, you're going to get asked some questions. But right now, please go, ladies and gentlemen, and patronize these fine people, because they're wonderful folks at BuyRaycon, BuyRaycon.com/JCE. You're going to get 15% off site-wide. That's 15%. Site-wide means everything on the site from one side to the other. It's a very wide site. As a matter of fact, you got to have that goddamn VistaVision computer monitor to see the whole thing. It's a wide site. Site-wide, 15% off.
Normal size site.
Normal site with the big spread out picture. BuyRaycon.com/JCE, 15% off. Can you get a pair of earbuds where one is in one color and one's in the other color? I wonder if you could do that. For some people, that have that skin disease, what is it, vitiligo? You might need a different color on one side of your head.
Okay, problems for another day, but for today and tomorrow, Raycon for good sounds in your head.
Yes.
BuyRaycon.com/JCE. Jim, before we move on and get some classic topics and some questions, I have to ask you only because a ton of listeners have sent it over. Have you seen the phony press release going around? Purported to be from AEW, banning you.
Yes. And it's cute, and somebody, mocked it up and everything, and to where it looks like one of their press releases, but a bunch of people, like you said, retweeted it or circulated it or whatever, that they like that it was real and that they were buying it. Oh, what are you going to say about this, Jim? Not in a mocking way. They were on my side. Like, how dare they? But no, it's not. It's not real. And there were certain subtle clues. I don't know if you have the copy in front of you. But there were certain subtle clues that it was a parody.
I have it here, yes.
Well, would you kindly read a few of the first lines to where we can stop when the first potential clue may have come up that all is not as it appeared?
AEW, for internal release only, confidential. Once again, for internal release only, Jacksonville, Florida, April 30th, 2025. All Elite Wrestling has always been about inclusivity, passion, and elevating the art of professional wrestling. Over the years, we have extended 14 cordial invitations to
Okay, stop. Wait a minute. First of all, the way they're starting this, it sounds like a press release from a goddamn, Walmart. And secondly, within the first line, if anybody's bothering to read this, they say we have extended 14 cordial invitations to Jim Cornette over the time period. And that's go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt, but there was it. That was the first red flag in the first sentence.
Over the years, we've extended 14 cordial invitations to legendary wrestling personality Jim Cornette to attend AEW events, all of which he has publicly declined. While we respect differing opinions, Mr. Cornette's persistent public criticism of AEW, women's wrestling, and wrestlers of smaller stature, combined with his extreme political views expressed on social media and on his podcast, has made it clear that his presence would be disruptive to our community and values. Effective immediately, Jim Cornette is no longer welcome at AEW events.
He is no longer welcome to any place he's never been before.
Let me stop for one moment before I read the rest of it, because someone in the Cult of Cornette commented, they said, how could they ban someone who has no interest in attending? And I'm like, well, they did ban Linda Hogan. Remember that play early on. But let's go back to this. We remain focused on delivering world-class wrestling to our fans. I'm thrilled to announce that our upcoming pay-per-view, Double or Nothing, on May 25th, promises to be possibly the greatest wrestling pay-per-view of all time. In all of history. Adding to the excitement, President Donald Trump will be in attendance, joining fans for what will be an unforgettable night. We can't wait to see you there. Signed,
and bingo!
Tony Khan, President of All Elite Wrestling.
There was the second red flag that this was a fucking rib. Number one, that he would actually be there. And number two, that of all people, that he would not be somebody that crowd would ban. But people bought that like it was because it looks nice on the graphic and it says for official internal use. So that was the same sticker they used to have on the vibrators at Spencer's Gifts for external use only.
Well, again, I think the thing that was a little problematic was how many people seemingly believed it and sent it over like, what are you guys going to say about this?
Yeah. People, they gloss over? They don't read with attention. They just kind of scan for words they like. I don't know how would you not see that instantly?
Well, Jim, let's move on from, where were we? Let's move on from there.
From there to the next place.
And let's go over here now Jim, speaking of AEW, a couple of AEW stars, or I guess more than a couple, have been in the news. Let me go first. On location, across the world, to Mount Everest, where Darby Allin, who has obviously not been on TV for a while, is apparently on his climb to the top of the mountain.
He's on the side of Mount Everest is where he is apparently from this video. And it didn't look like he was too far from the top. That didn't look like a giant mountain in front of him when he pointed and said, "There's Everest." And the premise of this video that he put out was that he took his skateboard with him. He's climbing a fucking giant mountain, Mount Everest, the mountain. Every piece of equipment, every bite of food, every ounce of beverage to drink, every vital piece of life-saving equipment that they're taking. And he took a skateboard and he did whatever they call the thing where he stands on the skateboard and then he jumps up and the skateboard flips over one revolution and then he lands back on it again.
Kickflip.
Thank you. Oh, skateboard person.
Yes. Gleaming
and you're one of the boarders. And he did that, and then they spent 30 seconds trying to fumble with a watch that'll tell them how many feet they are in the air, what the elevation is. And there it is, the world record for the highest kickflip ever done. Okay. You know, if he'd have dropped down on his fucking knees, they'd have given him a chocolate milk enema. I bet they'd have got the world record for the highest one of those too. Because who else is taking a goddamn skateboard to fucking Mount Everest?
The previous record, 9 feet.
Yeah. There's a guy in Delray Beach, Florida. What the... This, again, he's got a unique charisma and a willingness to do stupid things with his body. But then again, since he's found this very nice billionaire's son to pay him a lot of money to do those things, he fared better than he probably ever would have in life or ever should have. But when you think about it, this scrawny, emaciated, he's an underachiever, Darby Allin, in terms of trying to better himself. He's an overachiever in terms of wanting to never grow up and be a perpetual Peter Pan and do stupid, childish shit all his life. He's an overachiever there. But he's an underachiever as far as from his own lips, he slept in his car and was homeless and didn't make any money, and he gets in a business that he honestly probably 98% to 99% chance he was never going to make any money in. And he finds a sucker to pay him literally millions of dollars over the course of however long he's been there, from the start, 5 years, 6 years, whatever it is, to do a job that he clearly kind of likes, or he wouldn't be fucking doing all that shit. And then he goes and fucking climbs a mountain where he could be killed and not lose that job, but lose his life and lose the benefit of the job, even though the sucker is willing to pay him a ridiculous amount of money to climb goddamn Mount Everest. That's why I have no sympathy for this guy whatsoever, because he's not only an idiot, he's an underachiever professionally. In his chosen profession, he puts more emphasis and importance on assing off and jumping a toilet seat over a fucking mobile home than he does trying to get in the ring and draw some money, as strange as that concept may be, for the company that's paid him millions of dollars when no other wrestling promotion in the world would have done this. He's off on the side of a mountain with a skateboard. I think he's a fucking moron.
Should a heel come and run in and cost him getting to the peak?
Oh, that would be good. But how would you...
And then he just slides down the mountain?
Well, no, that's the thing. You would have to be able to see the guy coming because he'd be on the top of a mountain and you'd be able to see the guy coming or see the encampment. But you know what? That doesn't stop him on their TV. So let's say, okay, the other side of the mountain is where the heel has been climbing up.
Well, yeah, Wardlow. We haven't seen Wardlow in forever. He was climbing the mountain.
Wardlow's already sitting up on top. And he's turned into a Yeti.
Well, hold on now. We've taken a
No, because he's been up there for a while. He ran out of fucking cartridges from Harry's, and so he's all hairy, and he's got nothing but torn, raggedy skins of pelts of elks and things for fucking to cover his crotchal area and his private parts, and he's reverted back into a goddamn primitive mindset because of lack of human companionship. And Darby climbs up, and there's Wardlow, and Wardlow power bombs Darby off Mount Everest, and Darby falls from one pay-per-view all the way to the next pay-per-view. You see the start of the fall on fucking Double or Nothing, and then he doesn't land till All In. See, I just booked him something else.
It's a hell of a cliffhanger. It's a hell of a cliffhanger right there.
I'd see what you did there. Cliffhanger.
I saw footage from Mount Everest not too long ago. It's just people trying to stay in place while a big windstorm on top of the mountains happening. You just see dead bodies and garbage flying by. And I'm like, why would anyone want to do that? But Darby said, me first. Me first.
Again, this guy slept in his fucking car and was homeless and gets a job making all this money and wants to fucking go climb a fucking mountain. You'd be able to pry me out of that locker room with goddamn with a crowbar. I'd have a cot there. Yeah, I'm not going to fuck this up.
What do you do after this?
He's a juvenile delinquent. He doesn't give a shit.
What is he going to do after this to top this?
Obviously not go and get his real estate license.
Have you seen these fucking maniacs who climb the Empire State Building and buildings bigger than that without any sort of protective apparatus, and they get to the top and they're holding a stick so they can film themselves, but they're balancing on nothing. It's the scariest shit. Have you seen these things?
Yeah, the human fly thing, but now they have Spider-Man or whatever. But yes, they try to, those people need to be under some type of supervision from a state agency. And that we need to pour more resources, not less, into keeping an eye on various people. Don't need to be out in fucking society running around unaccompanied. Darby Allin is one. At least they're with him on the mountain. But I want, if the going gets rough, I wonder if one of those fucking Sherpas he's traveling with is going to sling Darby over their shoulder and carry him back down.
Well, that's the good thing about Darby. He's like 140 pounds.
Yeah, but the gravity is worse up there because of the goddamn height, don't you? That's the science of the lambs.
Well, the Sherpa, that is not the science of the lambs. This is a different science.
Yeah, the mountain lambs.
The mountain lambs? No,
mountain lambs. Where do you think the Sherpas get their lamb from? Lamb chops and lamb milk, they get them from the mountain lambs.
I heard they got great gyros at the top of Mount Everest from all those mountain lambs.
Well, see?
All right.
Yeah.
Jim, another AEW clip that's been going around from some of the listeners, and they wanted to get your thoughts on it. From Collision, which obviously we don't watch, it's Collision. FTR won a tag match and had a confrontation with Daniel Garcia, who we have not watched in a while. I think he was on something not too long ago, but got re-signed. There were rumors that WWE really wanted him, so Tony had to have him. And then he was given the TNT title. He's been on Collision. He lost. That's where we saw him. He lost to Adam Cole at the pay-per-view in the Battle of the Twink Division.
Yeah, and they put him on Collision where he's pretty much hidden.
But did you see this clip? Because it's going around.
Yeah, it's going around like the measles is going around. I swear to you, I can see it happening in the WWE office when they would hear a contract was up, but they would, slip him some information. Tell him you got an internal memo. We want Garcia. We'll pay any price for Garcia to run Tony's talent bill up because yes, he did fucking go to great lengths to sign this sucker. And he has produced nothing. Because what the fuck did anybody expect? It was another one of these, a bunch of the guys have told Tony how great Garcia is because he's such a nice kid. And he really works hard. And so Tony gave him who knows how much fucking money not to go to a place that would have set this fucking emaciated little twink on a bench a long time ago. He has been getting a push in AEW for what? From the time they brought him in just to put him on national TV at all at that stage of his career. He's been there 2 or 3 years, right? From start. He's not
least
1 pound heavier. He's gotten not one more muscle that shows. He's goddamn not got anything about his presentation that makes him other than a bland indie fucking guy. He tries on his promos to show that he can recite these lines that he's written for himself. But what is that accent? That ain't a New Jersey accent.
No.
What is that odd accent he has?
Well, he's from Buffalo, New York, but I don't know if that's necessarily a Buffalo accent.
I didn't know they had a Buffalo accent.
Yeah, the point is he sounds funny, and when you hear him on promos, you can't really take him seriously.
Well, no, but anyway, at least you can point at Kyle, our friend Kyle over there, who got on goddamn his head cut off and put on Lex Luger's body. Since he's been there, hadn't even been a year. He's fucking must live in the gym. He's trying at least something, all these odd outfits and changing his look and upgrading. He's a better looking athlete. Danny Garcia's a fucking bland looking indie guy that you could see anywhere. And that's apparently what he's going to fucking stay. But so the point is FTR now that have just turned heel and got Stokely as a manager and they've stabbed their best friend Edge in the back. They win a tag team match and they're standing in the ring and suddenly Garcia's music plays. And he comes out to the ring with a crowbar in one hand and a microphone in the other hand. So you see, he's confused. He's somewhat confused as to what he's going to do here. So he's coming prepared. It could be either way. And he gets in the ring, and again, Stokely gets in front of FTR. That's the fucking chicken shit manager. Hey, Bobby, step back. I'll deal with the rock and roll. But they're cowering back from a guy with a fucking crowbar. And the first thing that Garcia said, I wanted to come out here and beat you with this crowbar. And he phrased it in such a way that everybody immediately was let down. But they knew I'm not is going to be next. I wanted him to say, but then I realized you'd kick the shit out of me anyway. That's what he should have said. But I'm not going to do that. He still got the crowbar in his hand. But then he did a thoughtful dissertation on why he needs answers from them about what they did. And at one point he said, but I'm not going to come out here and have a therapy session with you guys. Well, that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
You're coming out, pacing around, meandering, being mumble mouthed and fucking limber tailed about every goddamn thing, mush mouth. While these three on FTR's side, the guy's got a crowbar. Either take him down and take it away from him or get the fuck out of the ring because he's not holding you. Why are you standing there? While he's just talking with a fucking crowbar, just leave. Or do something about it. So he finishes this goddamn dissertation and says, well, I guess I'm going to have to beat the answers out of you. So it's going to happen whenever the fuck it's going to happen. What did he say? Next week is either one of the three of you, I want a match, and I'll beat you up. And then he got out of the ring and walked away. And they stood there and listened to the whole thing like they were petrified. They were on their face. They were terrified. Oh, he's such a menace. We'll just stand here and listen to everything he has to say as he pours his heart out with his thought-provoking pussy speech. They all talk like pussies. All the baby faces are pussies.
Well, the heels were hiding behind Stokely Hathaway.
Because all the fans are pussies. Well, all the wrestlers are pussies because all the fans are pussies.
Well, are you excited to see where that goes? The FTR Stokely Hathaway?
No, I'm not. I'm a person who is quite accustomed to being threatened in various ways. Threatened with violence, threatened with legal issues, threatened with this and that and the other thing over the course of 40-something years. It needs a good threat, a good, believable, goddamn threat with some serious repercussions on a television program to get me interested. Not, well, I'm going to talk for a while and then I may or may not beat you up with this crowbar. That's not a threat. That's boring television.
Well, Jim, another clip that a lot of the listeners have been sending over to the point where someone had to get banned from our YouTube page because he kept spamming every video demanding you watch it.
What?
Is a Karrion Kross interview that I believe is from the post-show or something after WrestleMania. Something after WrestleMania that he wasn't on, except for the run-in during his match, during the AJ Styles match, that is. Did you get a chance to finally see this?
I saw that, yes, because you recommended the clip, and I have questions. First of all, hell of a promo. If he did anything like that on television, he might get over. But secondly, is he still employed after he did that promo? Is he still working there, or is it one of those things where it was on YouTube after the show and nobody was even watching it from the office?
Well, again, I presume it was on a post-show thing. I saw Sam Roberts there. I believe he does the in-house recap show. So it may just be a podcast. I don't know, but either way, he still works there.
If he's still working there, then somebody said, okay, do it. But the whole promo was, again, he's supposed to be reacting to what happened with AJ, or Allin, as he calls him. Blew it. You lost. You blew it. You didn't do what I told you, blah, blah, blah. That was the point of the thing. But he veered off into, he was doing the thing where he was pissed off anyway. It was trying to be Punk, but he didn't have the muffins. He had Scarlett, so he had some buns, but he didn't have the muffins. But he then veers off into, but advice Bill Goldberg gave me. Said, be a good soldier. Well, I was a good soldier and they released me. You know what being a good soldier gets you around here, get your time cut. And you try to pitch ideas. There's Scarlett value. See, he had to get her in there. Scarlett had a great idea. And they say, oh, that's too good of an idea. That's for those guys, not you. And basically vented as a wrestler would if they were pissed off and had their Popeye moment where they couldn't take it anymore, and how they've been mistreated and their time's cut and or they've been marginalized or subliminated or whatever the case may be, as a shoot promo type of thing. And then he said, so, and if that's all, and for the guy in the suit in the truck, fuck you. And he stood up and stormed off while Scarlett had been there. The camera was lingering on him, and she's looking up with the fake fear, like, oh my God, I can't believe you're saying this. Or maybe that's the range of emotions that she has on her face. I'm not sure.
He called himself Killer Kross.
Called himself Killer Kross. But it obviously was either okayed or nobody gave a shit. But the whole thing was, I'm going to give you a viral moment. Well, I guess he got his viral moment, but what is the purpose of it? That, I think, I'm trying to think back of who would have approved that. Yeah, make the company look like assholes. Or does it matter anymore? Because they're just all going to make all kinds of money anyway.
I guess the question is, can he do a promo like that with that kind of intensity? That length without breathing, just shooting out words and everything's making sense and it's great.
If he's not really personally insulted by the subject.
Yeah. Can he do it about something
he's working?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bingo. That's what we don't know.
Maybe that's the problem. That was really how he felt, but the other stuff he's been doing is not really how he feels, and I don't blame him. I ain't feeling it either, dog.
Well, hopefully more of that from Karrion Kross on the
But I hope as this other guy now, he's been exiled to a Pacific island because he wouldn't stop about this thing. Is he Kross's press agent or what?
No, it's just, listen, if it's nonstop on every video, and by that point I hadn't even seen the clip, and then people are like, this guy's when people start writing to me to say that someone else is being a jerk, I'm like, oh, this really must be a big jerk. And
well, we gave him we shouldn't have done that. Then we should have said, well, we would have talked about it if you hadn't have been so rude.
No, he said he was going to send you a bunch of cards to sign, so we'll see what happens.
I'll wait for that package. I can add some more cards to the vault sale.
Jim, let's get to some classic stuff before we get to some questions. I have a file here. This is from the files, ladies and gentlemen, where I go.
I was about to say you're not a carpenter.
Where were you on the 3rd? No, this is from the Wrestling News files, the archives of the Wrestling News, Wrestling Review, Wrestling Monthly, the Rings Wrestling, Major League Wrestling programs, and so much more. This is the George Grant file.
Oh my God.
Now, I'm sure none of the listeners have any idea who George Grant, well, some of them do, but a lot of them don't. The younger ones probably don't.
We do have one of the smarter historical audiences.
That is true, but we do also have a lot of young wrestling fans listening. I have here...
George Grant, by the way, we left that dangling, was one of the imitation Gorgeous Georges that popped up in the business, especially since George died, unfortunately, at an early age in 1963. But a lot of people didn't get the memo. George Grant was still doing a Gorgeous George ripoff in the mid to late 60s, I think, and then later on became some type of bogus evangelist. Am I correct in that?
Well, this is a really interesting file. Something here is a photo that was sent back. It still has the National Enquirer stuff from 85. George Grant versus Tony Nero. I have a letter here to Norm Keitzer, Pro Wrestling Enterprises, Mankato, Minnesota, from Mark J. Lieberman from Houstonville, New York, December 12, 1982. Dear Norm, enclosed is an article that appeared in the Sunday, December 12, 1982 edition of our local newspaper, the Poughkeepsie Journal. Written by a Marshall Fine of the Gannett News Service, it's all about the wrestling career of George Grant, who wrestled as Gorgeous George. I know for a fact that the first and original Gorgeous George was George Wagner, who passed away in the early 1960s. This Grant character did wrestle, but not as the original Gorgeous George. But yet, as this article is written, this Grant is taking the full credit as being the one who made the moniker Gorgeous George famous, and I feel this is wrong. Being Mr. Wagner is dead, I feel someone should set the Poughkeepsie Journal and the Gannett News Service straight on the facts as to who was the original Gorgeous George. In the best interest of professional wrestling, I also feel that the one organization to best accomplish this is your Pro Wrestling Enterprises.
Yeah.
Please send them a letter stating the facts, and I will pay the postage for the letter. Please find the stamp enclosed. Yours truly, Mark J. Lieberman. I have here the article. Let me just see if the stamp is still here. And I have the self-addressed.
By the way, I know a Mark Lieberman, and it can't possibly be the same one. But Mark Lieberman, if that is you, send me an email saying that's you, and I will talk about the incredible coincidence.
Here's the article from the paper, December 12th, 1982, by Marshall Fine.
That's the thing. Not only did this fucking guy do that and told people that he was the Gorgeous George, but when he died, newspapers ran the obituary like he was the goddamn Gorgeous George.
In the wrestling ring of life, Gorgeous George has a stranglehold on sin and a hammerlock on salvation. But Gorgeous George Grant, 58, a pioneer of professional wrestling, now spends his time in the preacher's pulpit, grappling with the wave of godlessness he sees overwhelming America. Here's a quote. "I was saved in 1965, Grant says in his growling drawl.
After being resurrected in 1963.
I kept wrestling and promoting until 1973, when I started preaching full time. The last few years, I was just using wrestling as a means to make a living while I was studying and preparing to go into full-time ministry." At his peak in the early 1950s, however, Gorgeous George was a gloriously outrageous villain, one of professional wrestling's first national stars. He was a mincing pretty boy with long bleached locks and flowing silk robes. "My image was true," Grant says. "I was brutal, sadistic, self-centered, and vain. I would beat a guy mercilessly and then prance around the ring to aggravate the crowd." A native of a small Texas town northeast of Dallas, Grant learned to wrestle while working at the carnival he joined at 15. He dropped out of high school, then joined the Navy during World War II. When he was discharged in 1946, he entered the professional wrestling ranks. Although Grant was one of the first professional wrestlers to adopt an attention-getting gimmick, it was more an accident than a plan.
One of the first.
It was more an accident than a plan that vaulted him into the national limelight. "It started by accident," Grant says. "I intended to use this sissy gimmick for 2 or 3 days, and it just exploded. After that, some guy got a hold of me and started telling me stories about how I was going to make lots of money. I did too, and he stole most of it. At that point, I hadn't even bleached my hair. That didn't come for about 6 months. I just had long hair, but in 1947, long hair was an absolute novelty." Let me stop right here.
Was it that hard because this was what year, 1982?
82, December 82.
Okay. You would have had to have not done any fact checking whatsoever. Now, I know that, again, the average person on the street didn't know that Gorgeous George Wagner died in 1963 and all of his trials and tribulations and etc. But I guess people just, this guy accepted this guy's story without even going to the library to check out whatever happened to Gorgeous George or any contemporary newspaper. If he was in the newspaper business, he could go down to the morgue and look at the files. How do you not fact check when somebody claims to be a former celebrity that they don't really look that anything like otherwise than they have bleached hair or used to have bleached hair? I don't even know if he was still bleaching it then. You see what I'm saying here?
Eventually, wrestling lost its sparkle for Grant. The expansion of television changed the sport from a national phenomenon to a regional one. Each territory had its own stars, and even its own world champions. Grant discontinued the Gorgeous George persona in 1963 and quit wrestling altogether in 1972.
And buried the body in the desert.
That was the year Gorgeous George died, I believe. So,
you know, the bad thing is he didn't quit that gimmick in 1963. He did it all through the 60s. And he didn't even, at least Gorgeous George Jr. called himself Gorgeous George Jr.
I'm convinced we're in the last days. I've reached a point of utter disgust. There's a growing ungodliness in this country because we've gotten so far away from the precepts of our founding fathers. People need salvation.
Now, wait a minute. Hold on here. He's mixing his metaphors. The founding fathers wanted nothing to do with organized religion. That's why they wrote it out of the Constitution. He's thinking of the real rules you got to follow. The 10 Commandments, the stuff that says, thou shalt not lie.
Well, I'm moving to the next thing here in this file. Here is an article. What is this from? Does it have a date? No date. Gorgeous 3. Oh, wow. This is coming close to home. Pastor John Michael of Mankato's Grace Baptist Church thinks George Grant might be getting a bum rap. Though Grant was not the original Gorgeous George, the wrestler turned evangelist did perform during the 50s and the 60s as Gorgeous George. And Michael believes Grant did not intend to misrepresent himself when he spoke in Mankato.
Oh, boy.
November 7th through 12th. Let me just see if this is in order here. Because, this follows the article. Great Imposter.
Isn't that like, but wait a minute. Isn't that like saying, even though he impersonated a famous person at one time, he didn't mean anything by it?
Yeah, and here's an article. Here's the whole paper, actually. November 16th, 1982, the Free Press, Mankato, Minnesota. Gorgeous George by Michael Larson, the managing editor. Ever since I started in evangelism, I've carried a whistle. If someone starts talking in tongues while I'm preaching, I want to see if it's real. If it's the Holy Spirit, a blast in the ear won't hurt him at all.
Oh, good.
I never heard that before. If it's the Holy Spirit, you can just blow whistles in people's ears?
Well, that's whether you tell whether they're faking it or not. What in the world is going on with these people?
Trying to see where it actually starts with him. Here's the original article, Pro Wrestler Coming to Grace. George Grant, known to professional wrestling fans as the blonde, carefully coiffed, Gorgeous George.
I think it's coiffed.
Will be in Mankato next week, preaching at the Grace Baptist Church, 6th Avenue and Lynn Street. Grant will tell his life story during the church's 25th anniversary meetings that begin 7 p.m.
He'll tell whose life story?
At the 25th anniversary show for them. A carnival wrestler introduced Grant to wrestling when he was 15 years old. After serving in the Navy during World War II, he began his career as Gorgeous George, a villain quickly recognized by his colorful robes and golden bobby pins worn in his long blonde hair. His talks next week will tell how he came to change careers in the mid-60s from pro wrestler to gospel preacher.
So he came into town, traveling from church to church, lying to people, claiming to be, he was a pro wrestler, but he claimed to be one of the most famous ever when he was not. He's talking about it. He was impersonating a dead man and then taking up collections from these people that he had just duped. Well, I guess he's following the MO of every traveling preacher, but nevertheless.
Well, again, the person who sent in the original letter I read here, Mark Lieberman, that was December 82, Poughkeepsie. So here's the follow-up to that Mankato article, Great Imposter.
I saw stories on Grant in the Louisville paper that was on a wire service in the 70s and knew it was bullshit, but go ahead.
By Michael Larson, Great Imposter, ? Norman Keitzer of Mankato and Gary Campbell of St. Peter want to set the record straight on Gorgeous George. Both have stepped forward to challenge evangelist George Grant, who bills himself as the former professional wrestler Gorgeous George. Grant was featured in a column here last week following his appearance at Mankato's Grace Baptist Church. Here's a quote from Norm Keitzer. While George Grant was a professional wrestler, and it is a fact that the word gorgeous is an adjective, which could be used to describe anyone, gorgeousness being in the eye of the beholder, and his first name is George, he is not the wrestler who was internationally famous as Gorgeous George in the 40s and 50s. That man was Gorgeous George Wagner, and he is the wrestler who headlined the major wrestling cards in Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, etc. It was Gorgeous George Wagner who became the top wrestling star on early television and who starred in several movies, etc. George Grant used his own name except for a short period of time during his career where he called himself Gorgeous George. He was strictly an imitation of the more famous Gorgeous George, who was an international star, and was soon exposed as such and returned to wrestling in preliminary matches as he had been for most of his career.
Wow.
While George Grant's while George Grant's religious work is to be commended, he gives the impression, as did your article, that he was once the internationally famous wrestler Gorgeous George. He is not. That man died in 1963. Can you imagine if you are Norm Keitzer, you run this Pro Wrestling Enterprises, and this guy comes to your hometown? He's in his hometown.
Yeah. Well, besides that, can you think of what all these churches hear he wasn't the guy he said he was. Well, he seemed like such a good Christian.
Well, what's it say here? Who's this Campbell guy? Let me fold this over. Campbell brought in a copy of a Playboy magazine article entitled Gorgeous George M.D. The article quotes from the publisher's preface to Gorgeous George's autobiography. It was Gorgeous George who almost single-handedly transformed professional wrestling from a sport to a spectacle, who ushered television out of the electronics laboratory and into the living room. No one who has grown up in the unremitting hothouse glare of the commercial tube will ever be able to imagine how brilliantly those first feeble sparks of video at home illuminated the spirit of post-war America. Yet even then, when a simple test pattern was a miracle enough to command our rapt attention, Gorgeous George was special. A pioneer in scarlet tights and golden ringlets, he pranced and he preened his way across the barren plains of the American consciousness, breaking the hard ground from which has since sprouted such unlikely and exotic fruit as Liberace, Little Richard, Muhammad Ali, and Monty Rock III.
Get dancing.
The Playboy article describes George Raymond Wagner as a highly sophisticated New York psychoanalyst who traded in his clinical gown for an embroidered wrestler's cape and transformed himself into the outrageous killer / fruitcake.
I remember this now. They wrote an article like Gorgeous George was really a fucking psychiatrist that on the side moonlighted to do this as a sociological experiment.
The author tells of a fascinating confrontation between Gorgeous George and a policeman at Bellevue Hospital in New York City. Wagner had finished dressing for a match at Madison Square Garden on March 7th, 1950, when he was summoned by one of his patients at Bellevue. Wagner, in flamingo silk shorts, carmine tights, and long flowing cape, found himself blocked as he entered the hospital. He tried to explain that he had to hurry quickly to see his patient and then return for his match. For one tense moment, the careful equilibrium in which the separate characters of Dr. Wagner and Gorgeous George had been maintained teetered wildly. Then, in a flash, he slammed the patrolman to the floor with a deft flying scissors kick, followed quickly. I gotta turn this, and it's stapled. God damn it.
It's a real page turner.
By a crushing spread eagle pounce and a bruising half Nelson. The nurse's shrieks brought a pair of burly black orderlies leaping into the fray, only to be sent reeling by a whirlwind barrage of rabbit punches. Locked by rage into his Gorgeous George persona, the caped psychiatrist pranced wildly up and down the corridors, delivering head shrinkers and fairy mind waves to staff members who tried to subdue him. Nurses wept, patients howled, an alarm wailed out over the intercom. Finally, a flying squadron of residents and orderlies managed to pin the madman, and a drab straitjacket enveloped the tattered remnants of his splendid costume. It was Gorgeous George's final bout. After the Bellevue match, Gorgeous George retired from both his professions and opened a small bar and grill in Los Angeles. In the decade before his untimely death at 48, in 1963, the Playboy article relates, he tended bar, worked on his autobiography, Is There a Doctor in the Ring? And according to a source, watched an awful lot of television. So we started talking about George Grant. Now this is other...
Playboy magazine did... What year was that? Does it have a year on it?
It does not. I mean, again, this is 82, but it's before this.
They did that article, and I remember hearing about it and even seeing it or reading it at one point, and I hadn't thought about it in a long time. But yeah, and people bought that too. Some people, oh, wow, I never knew that.
You know, it happened a lot. Who am I thinking of? Was it the Little Rascals? Where, like, there was like a bullshit Spanky that died, and it was a bullshit Buckwheat. There was a bullshit Buckwheat. That's what it was.
There was a bullshit Buckwheat.
Yeah. And, like, Spanky called him out because Spanky McFarland was still alive. And he's like, that's not Buckwheat. What the fuck?
Well, remember, there was some bullshit Stan Lane.
Bull Ramos. How about when one time there was a get-together at Slammers, Vern Langdon's place, and a bullshit Bull Ramos showed up, and like Victor Rivera like wanted to fight him in the parking lot because it was some guy saying he was Bull Ramos.
I don't know how they think they're going to get away with it, but I guess some of them do for a while.
And by the way, the pictures here, I have George Grant by Lil Al Vavasseur. So,
oh, well, you knew that was going to happen.
That's in here. And then there's a couple more pictures of him. He doesn't look too gorgeous in these shots from the 70s. And then here's a little press write-up and a photo for George Grant, 5'10", 216 pounds, Los Angeles, California, and his tag team partner, Gypsy Joe Rosario, 5'11", 218, Havana, Cuba.
He worked, George Grant worked East Tennessee in the 60s for quite some time, and I think he even may have had a brother at that point where they were a brother team.
I believe I have his record. He put out like a vinyl record of his preachings or whatever, or his sermon, or whatever it is. But here it is from the files.
If a UFC fighter becomes a preacher, does that mean they give a sermon on the mount?
This pair could cause some of the other teams plenty of headaches, and it's an unusual combination. See if you don't agree. George Grant was a one-time Gorgeous George character when under the name Gorgeous George Grant. He was a success in his pursuit of the dollar in the grappling game, too, because he decided to retire for a few years and spend some of his profits. George might not have returned to the game as an active participant if he had not run into Gypsy Joe Rosario. This long-haired and whiskered individual had that something that Grant knew was box office, and he let himself be talked into forming a team with the unpredictable Gypsy Joe. And with Grant's poise and know-how to keep Gypsy Joe from flying all over the arena in pursuit of anything from a straw hat to a pretty face, George has welded as tough a tag team as you can imagine. Grant is sure and safe with his sound wrestling fundamentals, but Rosario is so wild and unorthodox that fans say that he doesn't know himself what his next move will be. This is an exciting pair to watch. Don't miss their antics when they appear in your local arena. Well, there it is, a press write-up for Gypsy Joe and
you know what? That's another thing. Not enough antics in the wrestling business these days. We don't have antics like we used to.
When you would receive, let's talk about Smoky Mountain, just because OVW, it's a little late in the game at that point in terms of how people communicated. But when wrestlers would send you videos to come into Smoky Mountain, did they usually write up like a one-page in kayfabe explaining who they are? Like, what came with the video usually?
Some of them did, unfortunately, yes. I mean, the guys who are professional would have an 8x10 picture of them looking halfway decent, and a sheet with their contact information and maybe who had trained them or examples of places they had worked, and a videotape with highlights, not 2 hours of shit with 30-minute long matches shot with a camcorder from the back of the gym that nobody's going to fucking watch. And they were trying. It was the modern, more up-to-date version of, Stu Hart said, Bobby Fulton say, if you called Stu Hart, wanted to get booked in Calgary, it's send some pictures. Send some pictures. Like, you can tell how you can work if you send pictures. But that's what they had before video, right? But it was an updated version of that. But some guys, would go, and I saw this more, again, as time went on into the OVW era, but I hail from the planet Neptune, and I have landed on a spaceship, and I am Gork the Destroyer, or whatever, or going into detail like, I have worked with the following people, or this was even better, I've worked on shows with the following people. And then they list a bunch of names. Goddamn, one time, Stacy took a piss with Reba McEntire. We were at Calhoun's in Nashville, Hendersonville, actually, or maybe Goodlettsville. I'm not sure what the suburb is considered. Then she went in the bathroom, and son of a bitch, she came out of one stall and Reba McEntire came out of the other stall. So Stace could put on her resume that she once took a piss with Reba McEntire, but that doesn't really tell you whether she's a good pisser or not, does it? But so when they say I've worked on shows with this name and that name and the other name, I don't really think that's a, goddamn clear recommendation, but yeah, you'd get a lot of that stuff.
All right, well, that was the pissing with Reba McEntire segment here on the show. But, Jim...
Well, it is an unusual occurrence. How many other people can say that they took a piss and listened to Reba piss at the same time? There was audio on this also because they were right next to each other.
To conclude the George Grant / bullshit bogus gorgeous George from the file segment, what do you think of the way they morph the history, the way they use his actual death in 1963? One says it was him. Actually, I guess they both say it wasn't him. The second guy...
What are they both saying?
Because the first guy was saying that... George Grant was saying that in 1963 he stopped using the gimmick when, in reality, Gorgeous George died. The second guy was saying he had, the exact same background. He left the business and he opened a bar in California.
Yes. Well, and it was all bullshit because George Grant used the gimmick even after Gorgeous George was dead because, as we said, not everybody saw the newspapers. And the other thing, Gorgeous George did have a restaurant bar in the Los Angeles area before he died, Gorgeous George's Ringside, right? But
yeah, I got a bunch of stuff from it, allegedly.
Well, and allegedly, that wasn't exactly a great financial success either. So they're all just lying because in those days, in 1982, unless you were a wrestling fan and knew even to go to the library what to look for, unless, you were on the newspaper, then there's some element. If you're a journalist, there's some element of integrity involved in trying to fact check. But if you were just a regular jack off on the street, you couldn't readily check and see that Gorgeous George was really dead. So you might believe it, but there's a little bigger burden of proof to be able to fool reporters and journalists.
But, for a long time, it happened for the Little Rascals. It's happened for famous people. But with wrestling, it seems that it is a place where con artists, outside con artists, not even the internal ones, outside con artists say, you know what, I can lie my way in by saying I'm someone else. Because, there've been other, the Hangman Bruce Poe bands, obviously. That great example.
Yeah.
What was the other one? The one from Canada. Fuck, what was his name? Oh, I can't remember the other guy's name now. But
God.
There's always been these phonies, these complete phonies who had nothing to do with anything but want to pretend that they did.
But you know what? Most of them they haven't been trying to do it for great monetary gain. They've been doing it because they were marks and they wanted their family or other people to believe that they were really somebody. And they would do it that way rather than the con people who have misrepresented who they are that have gotten into wrestling, or the money backers and the Olu Olianis and people like that. Nobody ever tried to impersonate a wrestler to actually make a lot of money at it. Maybe the Gorgeous George Grant was getting publicity for his preaching scam, but there was no money to be made by making anybody in a business, especially, believe that you were somebody, because it wouldn't hold up. But in the public, you could get attention and people would say, oh, he's somebody.
Well, Jim, Gorgeous George Grant had records and he had various paraphernalia, pamphlets, who knows what. But who knows if he really had a good storefront, and who knows if maybe he had a good online store with the right partner, maybe his life wouldn't have taken the twists and turns which led him to pretending to be the original Gorgeous George while saying he's also speaking the word of God.
Or maybe, now on the other side of things, maybe that Gorgeous George could still be one of the finest psychiatrists at Bellevue today if he'd had a proper storefront to sell his psychiatry services and hadn't had to go across the world being a pro wrestler in his spare time, sort of like a Batman and Bruce Wayne type of dual existence. Well, either one. Folks, if you just want a storefront.
Jeff Walton told me that was the original plan after Gorgeous George had his head shaved. He was going to return and say that he was a doctor. He was going to be a bald doctor as a babyface.
Yes.
We never got to see it play out.
We never got to see that. And you never got to see his storefront. Because we're talking about storefronts. Shopify are the people to help you with your storefront. And they will come, they'll bring bricks, they'll bring mortar, they'll bring wheelbarrows and the hose, all the stuff that mixes the cement up. They'll build that thing right on your front yard. They will build you a storefront in about a day, day and a half. Depends on whether you want a window in it or not. But once they build that storefront, folks.
A digital storefront. Well, they will work with you. They will help you. It's you and them in this together.
It's you and them against the world, kid.
No brick and mortar needed. Although if you have brick and mortar and you want to sell your things online, you could still use Shopify.
It's not up to you to decide what these people build their stores out of. Now, one person built a store out of straw, but that didn't stand up. And the other person built the store out of sticks, and that didn't stand up. And finally, when they built it out of bricks, well, then you know the rest of the story, folks, and you can write your own story at Shopify. Because they're going to do it for you, folks. They're going to have hundreds of ready-to-use templates that Shopify uses to help you build a beautiful online store to match your brand style. Now, let's say you got the high fashion from Paris, and you got all the dresses where the girls look like all of their itty bits are hanging out and everything, like the young folks are wearing. You put those up on the store, and you'll have a bunch of people buying those things. You just make sure that it's clear you're selling the dress and not the model. But they'll do your design studio. They'll accelerate your content creation. They are packed with tools that write product descriptions, page headlines. They're even going to enhance your product photography. Now, let's say you take a picture of the cheeseburger that you're selling out of your kitchen. What they're going to do is they're going to go in there and they're going to tweak it where the cheese looks even gooier. The pickles look even crispier. They're going to pop that thing right out, and people will be mouth-watering coming to your door, and then you're going to have to feed these son of a bitches. Get the word out.
None of this is how it works, but get the word out about your products. Get on the biggest online. Get on Shop's app. People can find you. People can pay for you quickly and easily.
People can find. No, that's another thing. Shopify is going to keep these people from being able to find you. When they want their money back, they're not going to be able to find you. They're not going to be harassing you. They're going to be wandering the streets, wondering where their money went. Folks, you can get the word out like you've got a marketing team behind you. You can easily create email and social media campaigns to bring the people in and dupe them more efficiently. And best yet, Shopify is your commerce expert. They've got world-class expertise in everything from managing inventory. They're going to come to your house. They're going to count everything you got. And when they come back next week, you better have the same number. They don't take discrepancies lightly.
This is not
And
how this
they've
works.
got
They are a
expertise-
partner you can work with. You will enjoy working with them. We
be upfront.
Yeah, we work with them. They
Yes.
power our store. You've really got me thrown off with this one today.
Yes, well, they've got world-class expertise and also in international shipping. They can get something on a boat where other people can't. You know about all the problems we got with China. They got the back door to China. They're going to get this thing on a submarine, send it right to your customer, and the customer's not going to have to pay the tariff. And if you're ready to sell, you're ready for Shopify right now. And there's a reason why right now is the time to make money, because they're going to give you a $1 a month trial period. Well, not you, Brian. We're already in the system there. As you said, our show shirts are now on the shop app. So shame on anybody for not buying one. But if you go to shopify.com/JCE, you're going to be able to sign up for a $1 a month trial period where Shopify is going to show you what they can do for you. And I mentioned all those things, the media campaigns, the managing the inventory, processing returns. Let's say people want to bring their stuff back. They got to go through Shopify first, and Shopify is going to sit them down, and he's going to say, now, why the fuck do you want to return this? What's the matter with you? Don't you have any good sense, boy? Don't you realize this is a perfectly good product? And they're going to shame these people into taking that stuff back with them. So that's how they process the returns. Don't think anybody's going to get by with anything with Shopify around. For $1 a month, to hire a thug to do the same thing, it'd be at least $10-15 an hour. How much do you pay up there?
I don't pay up here. It's free.
Well, you'll get paid. Turn your big business idea into moolah.
Yes,
not the kind of moolah with two legs, but the kind of moolah that smells like green ink on paper.
Oh.
With Shopify on your side, $1 a month trial period. Shopify.com/JCE. Shopify.com/JCE. You can't argue with that. It's simple science.
Well, Jim, I'd like to ask you an off-topic question here, because I thought this was fascinating. I saw an article the other day in the New York Post, and it made me think about all the conversations we've had about professional wrestling history that's been wiped. The tapes were wiped. They were recorded over. They were used again. They were cleaned.
Yes.
There's a lot of things from places like Los Angeles, Tennessee, where even if there's history of other stuff from other territories, that stuff's gone. And I thought this was very interesting. It's an article from the Post by Mark Lungerello. Ailing Doctor Who superfan spends fortune to recreate 97 lost episodes to see the complete series before he dies.
What?
Much like wrestling, Doctor Who, which is a British institution and a public television institution for years here in America, Doctor Who, despite the popularity worldwide, the early seasons especially, there are complete story arcs that are gone. That the BBC in the 70s erased them to use for other things. So for those episodes, some I believe there are audio recordings, much like with wrestling where we don't have video, but there's some audio examples. They have behind the scenes photos, or I think maybe in some case, home footage.
Yes.
They have other things to use that kind of know what was there, but those episodes are gone. So before we go any further with this, what are your thoughts on that? Something like that, a big show starts in the early 60s, and in the 70s, they start erasing those tapes.
Well, that surprises me because obviously with the wrestling promoters, we know why that happened. There was no home video. There was no reruns. There was no really reusing the footage past. They would save great angles because they knew, we'll show this again when the Sheik comes back or whatever. But with local television in general, it was an expense thing. The story of Lance Russell, when he was program director at WHBQ in Memphis, they had the Dance Party show, which was kind of like a cross between Soul Train and American Bandstand, where they had all the Memphis musicians, the soul greats, and you'd imagine the famous musicians that lived and were in and around Memphis coming in doing live shows that they didn't save the tapes of. They just reused them. So on a local television basis, that happened for years also. But almost I can't think of an American television series, especially one that started in the 60s, that was either a network show or was syndicated in any kind of wide, meaningful way, that the footage, the tapes, the film, whatever, it doesn't exist in some form. I mean, even Jackie Gleason came out with the lost episodes, The Honeymooners, that he had locked up in his vault. That was from the 50s kinescopes. They kept network television shows because there were sponsors and production companies and people that they knew there was always going to be replay of television shows in some respects. So I can't understand, especially in the 70s, erasing any episodes of a popular TV show.
Let me go to this article here. Sometimes truth is stranger than science fiction. An ailing Doctor Who superfan spent a mini fortune to recreate 97 lost episodes of the series using AI, so he'd be able to watch it all again before he dies. London music producer Ian Levine, 71, sold his royalties to finance his mission to fill the gaps in the archives of the beloved British TV series that he said cost £100,000 or more than $130,000, even though he knows they will likely never be widely seen. I came very close to death 4 times, said Levine, who is battling nasal cancer and has been confined to a wheelchair since a stroke 11 years ago.
I've never even heard of that. Wait a minute. I've never heard of such a thing.
Nasal cancer.
Cancer of the nose.
Of the nasal cavity, technically, I guess.
Whatever.
And has been confined to a wheelchair since a stroke 11 years ago left him with limited use of his left side.
He's all right now.
I thought, I don't want to die having not seen them, so I made it my mission to see them before I die. I made a lot of sacrifices to do this. Levine, who has previously suffered from bladder cancer, sepsis...
What?
I don't mean to laugh. And
which was funnier to you, the bladder cancer or the sepsis? Which one tickled you the most?
Well, no, it's just he has this current issue, and then this is all stuff in the past.
He's got some shit up his nose too.
Bladder cancer, sepsis, and single sarcoidosis, or whatever that is. Estimates he spent 70,000 pounds of his own dough, while a group of other Who fans shipped in 30,000 pounds through a donation campaign. He searched the world, as far as Bangladesh and Turkey, to find designers up to the job of making moving AI images out of production photos. No,
they got a lot of cutting-edge designers in Bangladesh.
Well, they work cheap there. Making moving AI images out of production photos, notes, and the actual audio from the stories. For every good one I found 20 scammers who wanted you to send £100 first, or I won't do it. And then I'll send you a clip, he told the Post in a phone interview from England. 19 out of 20 clips were absolutely laughable. Just countless trash. I got ripped off by 19 different people. It cost me at least 10,000 pounds in rip-offs. Since the AI remakes are not authorized by the BBC, he is now only sharing the videos with a small group of friends and fellow diehards who also contributed to the effort. Levine has been hooked on the show since it debuted in 1963 in the UK and was an unofficial fan advisor to the program. In the 80s, the BBC once had a policy of purging film after broadcasts that left major gaps in its archives, including the first...
Why would they do that?
Including the first 6 black and white seasons of Doctor Who, which focuses on the adventures of a mysterious alien who travels in time and space. Copies have turned up in private collections that have been found in foreign TV studios where they were shipped for broadcast, but the reality is many or most of those still missing no longer exist in any form. So the BBC apparently, Jim, to summarize a little bit more of the rest of this, made recreations using cartoons. They used animation to, in some cases with the audio they had, in some cases not with the audio they had, to recreate the story. Ian Levine here, who has a Facebook group I know, he spent money to recreate it with AI. And now this is still early in the lifespan of AI, but I've sent you a clip which allegedly has some footage of what it looks like, just a montage. If you want to see what AI recreating television from England in 1963, what that looks like.
Yes, and I have that clip. And let me just say, if he wanted to spend a lot of money on something that wasn't going to be widely seen, why didn't he just invest in AEW?
Well, Tony's not looking for outside investors.
First question I had, but I'm clicking on this link. Son of a bitch. I'm going to mute it because it's fucking loud. 97 missing Doctor Who episodes. It's very spooky in terms of the faces aren't all moving even when the mouths are, but goddamn, this is clearer black and white television than I'm used to from 1963. Audio isn't bad. I'm listening to a little audio. Yeah, shit, my rabbit ears wouldn't have had a picture anywhere near this clear.
Oh, so you actually really, you like it. Okay.
They look halfway legitimate. This is not in high def, but it looks better than, like I said, the old Ken. Have you seen any of the Avengers episodes before Emma Peel joined and they really started spending money on them? When it was just Patrick McNee and the other fucking guy, and it was two guys, and it was shits. But the quality of the picture on those episodes, it sucks. This looks pretty fucking nice. Well, now we don't need actors.
And again, this is derived, and it'll only be improved upon, but this is derived just from photos, audio, and notes.
Yeah, that's insane. I wish I could have done Smoky Mountain Wrestling like this.
Well, there's still time.
I don't think there's enough time for me to get really interested in doing that again.
If you want to spend £100,000, you could book all the stuff you always wanted to book and never got a chance to. Living or dead, it doesn't matter. AI.
I could have the wrestling bear as the mystery partner. I never got to do that.
Or Joe LeDuc.
Well, I tried to do that, but he didn't cooperate.
But what do you think?
Well, that's very, yes. And the monsters are odd also. Well, now I've clicked off and I've clicked onto something else. I'm back on just a random YouTube page here. What did I do? But very odd. Yes, there we go. The missing episodes of the Doctor.
Well, again, what do you think of the idea of someone doing this for wrestling? We have audio for a lot of stuff that there's no video. There may be some pictures, at least for studio wrestling, if not a picture of that day, a picture of what it looked like in general. What do you think of someone using AI to recreate wrestling that is lost?
Well, see, that I don't think is doable because with this is a TV show, so they even had some audio, so they have pictures of the actors. They can walk around and talk to each other. And you can create a, shaggy space monster that can walk around and throw boulders or whatever. But without video of the wrestlers, you wouldn't have any frame of reference to even tell AI what their wrestling looked like. So it would default to what AI thinks wrestling looks like, which would be modern wrestling. So the whole reason to have footage of that so you could see the way these guys used to do it, it may be, I guess you could feed the AI some film of other wrestlers doing shit in 1953, but then you would get Sputnik Monroe wrestling Billy Wicks, but he looked like Buddy Rogers against fucking Pat O'Connor. You see what I'm saying? It wouldn't be unique to that. What made that person special? For something I was writing and talked to you about a few weeks ago. Pat Malone is the Green Shadow, drew all that money in Nashville and Knoxville and Birmingham, all over the South. Before television, there is no way to see how he wrestled because it doesn't exist. So you could take a picture of him and I guess plug it into the AI with another wrestling match of somebody else from 1943. But how would you couldn't get there, could you? Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. You may be able to at least replicate the look, but if the only thing
he'd just be doing something somebody else did,
exactly,
which wouldn't be the idea.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing you could derive the style from would be written notes of what his style was, because there is
there are none. I mean,
exactly.
He used soap in the babyface's eyes, and the people tried to pull him out of the ring and kill him. I mean, how do how would you recreate that with any specificity?
What do you think about using AI to do storylines differently? And every storyline gets to a point where the fans think they know better, it should go a different way. With AI, you could do that. You could see how your outcome would work in front of
Jesus Christ. You can do that with regular intelligence too. Just if you're too goddamn predictable, change it up a little bit. You don't need fake intelligence. A lot of people are working with fake intelligence these days, from the government on down.
Well, Jim, let's get some questions here before we wrap it up and call it a day. This was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Burke in Green River, Wyoming. A friend of mine recently told me that she is the granddaughter of former wrestler Jim Blood. Jim died shortly after she was born, and her father never talked much about his wrestling days before he passed away a few years ago. I wondered if Jim knew anything about Jim Blood, because I'm not finding much on Google.
Brian, do I have some type of brain tumor? Am I having a brain fart or
side of your head? Yeah.
Yeah, possibly on the side of my head here. Where these tight fucking headphones are. Have you ever heard of a professional wrestler named Jim Blood?
I have not. Obviously, Richard Blood, Dick Blood.
Well, yes, that's an unfortunate way of phrasing it.
But he was known as Dick Blood. I mean, that was Ricky. That was Ricky Steamboat's name. That's his real name, and that was the name he wrestled as when he first debuted. But I've never.
Yes, well, his real name was Richard Blood, but then some wise ass promoter took a picture of him and put the caption on it, "Dick Blood," and I don't know if that would have got over or not.
And then Tito Santana briefly wrestled as Richard Blood.
Because Richard Blood is kind of a cool name. But I don't, Jim Blood, I'm sorry. We spoke earlier about sometimes people want other people to think that they were more famous or accomplished in a specific field or any field than maybe what they were, and they kind of fudge things a little bit. And I think that's maybe what Jim Blood did.
Well, technically, too, if it's this young lady, assuming she's young, her grandfather, and we're talking Wyoming, I mean, there could have been someone working small shows in Wyoming 50 years ago that we just don't talk about because,
we always do that caveat that, it is possible that, somebody, a local show somewhere at some time wrestled, but as far as a meaningful, widespread, lengthy, or recognized career, that gets tougher.
Jim, our next question was sent via email to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Khalil. Who do you think got the better women's division right now? Is it AEW or WWE? Have a nice day.
Yeah, have a nice day. I'll set this bomb off in front of you. Oh, I'm sorry, but it's the WWE. I mean, even though I think that, again, all the women's divisions are too numerous because it shouldn't be 50-50. It's ridiculous to think that. But of the really professional, accomplished, attractions in women's wrestling, the WWE has most of them, do they not? I mean, the other side, it's kind of tough over there. And Toni Storm can work, but it's so just silly for the kids that like silly wrestling and want to laugh at everything. It's just bogus bullshit. But on the other side, you've got Bianca, you got Tiffy, you got Rhea, you got Charlotte. For those of you who want to get pissed off, but you've got a lot more professional, better looking. I'm not talking about attractiveness. I'm talking about the package of, does this person look like a celebrity in wrestling or not? It's the WWF or WWE or whatever they're calling themselves these days. Can you deny that?
I think WWE is the better women's roster. I think AEW's women's roster has some real talent who haven't been necessarily used the way I like. I think Megan Bayne is a star. I mean, I'm waiting to find out, she's something bad, but she seems like she seems great and she has a presence. Toni Storm, again, she's lost in her gimmick and it's working for her, but can't deny she's talented. Jamie Hayter, I thought had a world of talent, but she has the least marketable look in the women's division just because of her color scheme.
She looks like a giant Cabbage Patch doll.
You know what? That's exactly what it looks like. That's funny. There's Thunder Rosa is good when she's not fighting people. I mean, I don't even know what the hell's going on over there. WWE wins that, yeah.
Yeah, you're looking deep to try to justify something that you can't find.
All right, Jim, our next question here, sent via email to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com, is from Neil, the Banfoot, Northern Ireland.
The Banfoot? What's going on?
Bannfoot, Northern Ireland. The Banfoot, like the Bowery. With regard to the recent internet phenomenon over who would win a battle between 100 men and one gorilla, and given Jim's years of experience in the wrestling industry, could he give us an insight on how such a matchup would play out? 100 men versus a gorilla.
I've seen people talking about this thing, and then, they're going to start with the memes. Well, save the 99 guys, just throw Brock out there, whatever. Honestly, 100 grown adult men with a plan, and simply by sheer numbers and fucking the weight of the oppression of weighing the fucking poor little outnumbered gorilla down, ought to be able to do something. Of course, now the first ones to come up on him from the front are probably going to wish they didn't. But if you take your most expendable, say 6 or 8 guys out of that 100, and you run them up to the front while he's gnawing on their carotid arteries and breaking their bones, you get 4 to come in at a leg, 4 to come in at another leg, 4 to come in at an arm, 4 to come in at the other arm, and maybe 6 to jump off the goddamn balcony on the back of his neck. You take him down, you tie him up, put the sugar hold on him. And then by sheer weight, because 100 men.
Who the hell's putting the sugar hold on him?
Well, the guy with the longest arms, of course. And now if you got 100 guys and they're 180 pounds apiece, well, 180 times 1,800, that'd be 18,000. That'd be 9 tons. Then just all lay on top of him. He won't be able to kick out. I think that gorilla's fucked. Port that. Then we're going to have to call the authorities, because that's cruelty to animals and the mistreatment of wildlife. And somebody's going to get sued over this.
Well, Jim, a quick follow-up before we move on from Ryan in Tazewell, Tennessee. Sent us to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com.
Okay, wait a minute. What? Where?
Tazewell?
Tazewell.
There's an E after the Z. I thought that would make it Taz.
Well, it doesn't, because it's East Tennessee, and they don't do things like that. Tazewell was where I saw the spot show with the 1978 WFIA convention on a Saturday night. Tazewell, Tennessee.
What is your opinion on the debate that has swept the internet this week? 100 men versus a gorilla. I keep seeing it said a bunch of guys like Brock Lesnar would win, but I think you can go the other way with 100 Paul Heymans. They would definitely win because the gorilla would just get tired with the sheer amount of mass. What are your thoughts?
Well, but see, here's the thing. Muscle weighs more than fat. So your 100 Brock Lesnar's would be heavier than your 100 Paul Heymans. Now, the thing is, the 100 Paul Heymans may act as some type of, I don't know, living quicksand, in which when the gorilla tried to wade through it, he would be mired down into the suet and the cottage cheese-ishness and the overall, gristle of the thing, to the point where he would be immobilized, and then you could just kind of pick him off, but I'm not sure.
So you're saying 100 men can defeat a gorilla?
Well, yes, but it depends on whether they got a plan.
Who do you think will win, a gorilla or a lion?
Well, now, for heaven's sake, now we're talking mixed martial arts here. They're two completely different disciplines. You've got the bear hugging, chest beating, fucking fist walloping gorilla, and then you've got the jumping, leaping, roaring, biting fucking lion. Those are two different disciplines. What rules are we operating under?
Well, and let's just say for this example, we're on flat land. There are no trees to prop yourself up and pull yourself up.
I think I got the lion, because the gorilla's going to bleed to death. Because if the gorilla can't jump up and grab the tree limb and swing and give the drop kick and the whole 9 yards, then no.
All right.
But now if there was trees, then the gorilla would be back in the game.
No, then that's home field advantage if there ever was. You can go up, climb the tree, and throw shit and just sneak attack at will.
Yeah.
All right, this has been Mensa Talk.
Wild Kingdom.
Here on the drive-thru. But Jim, you mentioned
I'll be Marlon Perkins. You can be Jim. And
you mentioned that some of these men, for reasons you have not disclosed, may want to sue. Is that what you said?
Yeah, that's what somebody's going to get sued over this. Maybe this bad program. I don't know. Would you like for me to talk to somebody about suing somebody? Or would you like me to tell?
Yes, tell everyone.
Would you like me to tell people who they might talk to if they want to sue some? Oh, God damn it. Call this man.
Call Stephen P. News. If you need to sue. An outlaw mud show or two. He'll sue the rest.
Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. You don't have to worry. You can call Stephen P. New at newlawoffice.com, 877-50-STEVE. And whether you're for the gorilla or against the gorilla, he's got somebody that can be on your side. He has pro-gorilla and anti-gorilla clerks in the law office now waiting to take whichever side of the case that you're up on. So if you want to be a monkey swinging around a tree, then you hire Stephen P. New. Or if you want to be a living, breathing human being that's smart enough not to fucking fight a monkey, then just hire Stephen P. New and he'll take the monkey to court. But one way or another, don't monkey around with Stephen P. New at newlawoffice.com, 877-50-STEVE, because he is not a man to be monkeyed or trifled with. Only if you're Peter Tork, Mike Nesmith, Davy Jones, or the other fucking guy.
Mickey Dolenz.
Mickey Dolenz, yeah. If you're
guy.
one of them, then you can monkey around with Stephen P. New.
What about a kangaroo? Kangaroos are pretty tough.
Well, I don't like the odds of facing them in court.
All right, Jim. Well, let's get a few more questions before we wrap up this banner episode of the today's drive-thru is booked by Tony Khan, ladies and gentlemen. Jim, this next email was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Becky W. Back in the late 90s, I worked with a woman named Barbara who said she was an ex-wife of Bobby Eaton. We live in upstate South Carolina. They had a son together.
God damn it.
At the time, it was cool to hear her stories because I had been a lifelong wrestling fan. The more I worked with her, the more we all realized she was batshit insane. I would love to know any good wives or ex-wives stories you have from your time on the road, or if you ever met Barbara and also realized she was a tad psychotic. Bobby Eaton's wife from South Carolina, Barbara.
Yes, but boy, I'll tell you what, she made a hell of a plate of cornbread, though. That was the thing. No, Bobby Eaton was never married before he married Donna. And he did not have an ex-wife living in South Carolina named Barbara or any other name. But boy, we continue, whether they're believing the press release that's mocked up or they're believing the Gorgeous George impersonators, or whether they're wanting to be famous wrestlers named Jim Blood or Barbara. Yeah. No.
Barbara Eaton.
Barbara Eaton. She could have been famous on I Dream of Jeannie. Barbara Eaton.
It's one thing to be obsessed with a celebrity, someone you see on TV or at the live local arenas. It's another thing to concoct some story in your own head, let alone share it with other people that you are or have been in some relationship with someone. That's crazy.
And it happened again. It still happens today if you watch the gossip shows on TV, or people are always pulling something like that. But it happened in wrestling regularly all over the country, that everybody was a long lost relative or an ex or had some attachment that they could tell the other fans that came to the matches every week so that they would stand out and be special in some fashion, or tell people in their private life that they got even less way to fact check it.
Jim, our next question was sent via the Cult of Cornette Facebook group. This is from Dylan King. What are Jim's thoughts on blindfold matches?
Well, and I guess we have to explain some of them. Not everybody's seen the Jake Roberts Hood of Darkness match, or what was that they called it?
I think it was just
who was it? Jake
match. Jake and Rick Martel, the model, because he had sprayed arrogance in the eyes of Jake Roberts.
But who called it the Prince of Darkness match or some kind of thing?
Was it Kevin?
That was Kevin, maybe. But nevertheless, it's like everything else. If you understand why it was why the idea was concocted and how to execute it and how to work it, and don't make it just really goofy, then it works. But a lot of those things don't often happen, and sometimes it don't work. But the idea is that, originally the way it came up was, I could beat you with one hand tied behind my back. Well, I could beat you blindfolded. Well, I take you up on that dare, that kind of thing. And then in Tennessee, when I first saw them, it was the blindfold battle royal that they would do at spot shows where there's only 8 guys on the card. And an 8-man battle royal looks a little sparse. So 8-man blindfold battle royal, you get the black hood that you put over everybody's head, and then they're reaching out, trying to feel their way around, and it takes longer, right? But then Watts took it in Mid-South and did what Roy Shire would have done with it. He made it sound dangerous and plausible. He said, we're going to take 18 fucking guys and we're going to put hoods over their heads so they can't see, and you have to be thrown over the top rope to the floor to be eliminated, so their necks could be broken, and the last man in the ring is the win. And it drew in the main event of his regular towns one time because it was different. But it depends on how you sell it, who's involved in it, how they're doing it. Then the old deal where the heel would peek behind the referee's back. He'd peek and get the advantage on the babyface, and then get on the babyface who was blind and couldn't see where it was coming from. But then the people would realize that they could help the babyface. When the babyface would be in the corner and he'd point, the people would boo if he wasn't pointing right. But if he pointed in another direction, it was pointing at the heel, they'd cheer, yay! And the heel didn't know what was happening. Why are they cheering? And the body language that you would show in the thing. And then finally you'd get the baby face where he'd get his hands on a fucking. But It's like everything else. How's it done? Who's doing it?
All right, Jim, our next question was sent via the Cult of Cornette Facebook group by Ian Richings. Hey, Jim, I'm 27 years old, and my dad who introduced me to wrestling...
Sounds like a personal ad. Wait a minute. What's going on here?
And my dad who introduced me to wrestling, now 57 years old, grew up going to shows at the old... I've added old. Grew up going to shows at the Louisville Gardens. My favorite story of his took place during a Jerry Lawler match with Jimmy Hart at ringside. My dad's late stepbrother got so fired up during the match that he socked Jimmy Hart in the neck. Jimmy hit the floor, and my dad, his stepbrother, and stepdad were promptly escorted out. According to my dad, the story ends with Lawler getting Jimmy back on his feet and winking at my dad and his family before putting the boots to Hart. Do you remember this particular instance? And if not, does a similar story come to mind of fans getting a bit too physical at the Gardens?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of stories of fans getting too physical at the Gardens. I do not remember one where a guy came up out of the audience and rabbit punched Jimmy Hart, who went down, and Lawler just calmly winked. The one I remember jumping Jimmy when Lawler turned around and saw the guy on top of Hart wailing him in the middle of the ring. He fucking went over and grabbed him. The cops hit the fucking ring, and the cops all grabbed the guy and threw him bodily over the top rope to the floor before almost drawing a gun on Jerry Jarrett, who was hitting the ring on the other side. I wasn't at ringside for every single time that Jerry Lawler and Jimmy Hart were together in Louisville. After I got into business, I missed some of the shows. I'm saying, and I'm sure they were escorted out for potentially trying to do that. Maybe Jimmy was going down because everybody was in a scuffle on the floor. I'm sorry. I'm just telling you that if somebody had nailed Jimmy hard enough that he went down from that, and the cops weren't all over the guy instantly, and if Lawler was in the vicinity, he would have been trying to tear the guy's eyeballs out too until the threat was neutralized. So there may have been a scuffle and a swing, and it maybe have been described there a little bit more grandiose than it was. But no, real violence from the audience, which happened regularly in the Gardens, in the ring, especially in the early mid-70s, was not ever winked at. There was the Bearcat Wright gave that guy probably brain damage one time when the guy tried to punch him, and he kicked him in the head as hard as I've ever seen anybody kick anything with those fucking boots he was wearing. And they got sued over that. There was a time the bounty hunters you remember the guy on room 222 that had the red afro kind? He was a white guy, but had a red, big afro type of head of hair. You remember that?
Not really.
Well, point is, in the 70s, a lot of people had the big heads of hair. This guy tried to get on Jimmy Kent, the bounty hunter's manager, one night. I think he hit the ring to do it. And Jerry Novak ended up with, it looked like he pulled Ronald McDonald's wig off when he grabbed that guy by the head, and he beat his face in with the other hand and then ripped his hair out and was holding it and waving it around the ring. There was all kinds of fan interaction back in those days, but I don't remember him winking at anything.
Jim, someone in the Cult of Cornette Facebook group, Chris Flatt, wanted to get your opinion on this. I know I've seen video from way back of you talking about it. I never heard Bobby Eaton's version of it. I'll read this. This is apparently from an interview Bobby did with DDT Digest, and then you can add to it at the end. What was the oddest experience he had in a wrestling ring? That's an easy one. It was when I was with the Midnight Express. Can't remember whether it was Dennis or Stan. We were wrestling two guys for a TV match. I'd never seen them before. Well, this one guy was like Superman. We throw him or kick him out of the ring, and he'd jump right back up on the apron and onto the ropes. I'd never seen anything like it before. Normally, when you throw or kick a guy out of the ring, he catches his breath, and it gives you a chance to gather your thoughts and figure out what you're going to do next. But this guy kept jumping right back up, no matter what we did. It was the weirdest thing. Finally, we get the win, pinning the Superman guy. So the referee is raising our hands in victory, and the Superman guy shimmies over.
He shimmied.
The Superman guy shimmies over on his back and boots me in my ass.
Yes.
And boots me in my ass from flat on his back. I was like, what the hell? Normally when you beat guys, they're smart enough to stay down. I was so shocked. I was so shocked. I wasn't even sure what to do. So I stomped him once, not all that hard, to give him a hint. The referee went to raise our hands again, and believe it or not, I actually moved away from the guy to give him the benefit of the doubt.
And he shimmied.
So the guy actually shimmies across the ring on his rear end and boots me in the ass again. So my partner and I look at each other and just proceed to beat the living crap out of the guy who's already on his back. Superman's partner comes running in, probably just trying to protect his partner, but we didn't take any chances. My partner and I beat the crap out of him too.
But you know who that was? That was Wee Willie Winky.
I've never heard Bobby Eaton's version of it.
That was Wee Willie Winky, and I'll tell this real quick for the new listeners, but at Atlanta TV, you know, Mike Jackson would bring a carload of job guys that he had trained from Alabama, or the guys that come in from Greenville, South Carolina, that worked at local indies, but somehow these guys got booked. It was two muscle builders and this little hatchet-headed prick, Wee Willie Winky, that came in the same card. We'd never seen any of the three of them before. And the two muscle guys, you know, looked like something, but, you know, we didn't know whether they could work or not. But Wee Willie wanted to be called Blue Thunder because he had some blue in his outfit. And I guess he fancied himself that he was Blue Thunder. He was about legitimately 5'6" and maybe 160 pounds, just, you know, ridiculous, right? And so when Dusty was putting the names down against the guys, he said, Blue Thunder. He said, call him Wee Willie Winky. Call him Wee Willie Winky. Well, Wee Willie Winky didn't like being called Wee Willie Winky. He was already in a bad mood when he went in the ring. So it's what Bobby said normally. And we were the nicest ones with the job guys, right? We never hurt anybody. We didn't take advantage of them. You know, if they could work, we gave them a spot.
Monkeys. Monkeys.
Well, no, they did all that on their own on purpose. We didn't. No, they asked us to do that to them. I'm just telling you. But, you know, the point is, we were always nice. The job guys worked with him, whatever. This guy, Bobby said, whatever, he locked up and did something to him, threw him out of the ring. And the guy jumped right back and jumped over the top rope to get back in the ring. This little tiny, minute little prick is going to be the goddamn star of the show here on TBS against the Midnight Express. And his partner, by the way, had never seen him before either. His partner was one of the, you know, just local job guys they just put together, right? So they did another couple things. And it was Dennis, by the way, was the partner, which was another. If it had been Stan, Wee Willie might have got treated a little bit better. Fucking 2 or 3 things he had done, he just popped right back up. So they had the other guy tag in. They did some stuff to him. And then they were supposed to take it on old Wee Willie. So they get him back in, and I believe it was a rocket launcher finish. And boom, Bobby covers him 1, 2, 3, and then stands up. And as he said, Bobby's looking at the camera, the guy's behind him. I'm looking toward Bobby, so I see the guy. And as Bobby's got his hand, the referee's raising his hand, and Dennis is coming in the ring. Fucking Wee Willie shimmies over about a foot on his ass to be able to reach up and just kick Bobby lightly in the ass. And Bobby felt it and turned around. It was like, he wasn't sure what he did. So he stomped the guy in a working way and then turned back around. And that's when Dennis is coming in. Dennis sees him do it the second time. And as soon as the guy did it the second time, they both took off on Wee Willie and started kicking the shit out of him. Now, the partner ran in because he just was so scared. He didn't know what to do. And he thought, oh, shit, more shit's going on. I should run over there. And Bobby turned around and they could punch him right between the eyes. Boom. And the guy said, fuck it. He got out. And Wee Willie is clamoring for the fucking ropes to get, because they're kicking the shit out of him for real. The ass kicking on the television show, as I remember, was covered by the replay of the rocket launcher. So you couldn't really see what was going on. You started to see the leg raise as they flew the replay in on the first ass kick, but you heard the ring going boom to boom to boom. And Wee Willie is trying to scramble away from him and comes right over the bottom rope right next to me as I was coming in. And I kneecapped him with the goddamn racket edge right as on his way by. Whap! And hit that fucking kneecap. And goddamn, he gets out of that ring and goes scurrying off. So Bobby and Dennis jump out, and Dennis is leading the charge because they're going to go kick the teetotal shit out of this fucking guy. However, Dennis did say on the way around, watch the fucking bodybuilders because we didn't know about them. They came with him. Well, when we got around the corner, there was Dusty in Wee Willie's face looking down at him because Dusty was 6 feet tall, so he had at least 6 inches on him. And he had his finger up in his face, and he was saying, if you want to make a comeback on somebody, motherfucker, make a comeback on me. Get your shit and get the fuck out of my building. And Wee Willie took off with the bodybuilders, and nobody ever saw him again. If you want to make a comeback on somebody, motherfucker, make a comeback on me. Get the fuck out of my building.
Was that something you guys commonly talked about? Like, was it an incident that you guys always could reference? That
Yes, we were. Find Wee Willie. He'll kick your ass, Bobby. Bobby Eaton got his ass kicked on TBS by Wee Willie Winky.
Superman, as he calls him.
Blue Thunder.
Send your song commissions. Send your song submissions. CornyDriveThru@gmail.com. But with that, the drive-thru is closed. All right. We got a lot of stuff coming up. Of course, the big pay-per-view next week on the show, the Jim Cornette Experience in a few days. Go through the archives, patreon.com/Cornette. $5 a month gets you access to the archive going back to 2013. The official Jim Cornette YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and search for Jim Cornette. It'll come right up. Full episodes, clips of the episodes, omnibus collections, the Travis Heckel artwork you love, the official Jim Cornette YouTube channel. There you can also find our store. Get show t-shirts for this show, the drive-thru, as well as the Travis Heckel artwork of Corny. You can get it there. You can go to the shop app and look for Jim Cornette or Arcadian Vanguard, or go to ArcadianVanguard.com. Cornette's Collectibles at JimCornette.com. What's going on, Jim?
The big sale. See what's left. Go there now. If stuff is sold out, you should have gone there earlier. But if stuff is still there, you're there in time.
At JimCornette.com. Of course, the drive-thru is brought to you by the law office of Stephen P. New, 877-50-STEVE. Get even with Stephen at NewLawOffice.com. Don't forget, Jim's on Twitter at the Jim Cornette. I'm on Twitter at Great Brian Last. I'm also on all sorts of social media. Just look for Great Brian Last, and it's me. And of course, don't forget about the wrestling news each and every day, wherever you find your favorite podcast, The Wrestling News. But until next week, back here on this show, and of course in a few days on The Experience, for Jim Cornette, I'm the Great Brian Last. Tally-ho!
Ouch!